7th workshop. All rise, please, as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to welcome everyone to our Friday night get-together. I want to thank our staff for being here and for the public for attending our workshop. We'll begin with public audience. Is there anyone? Yes.
Joan Coe, 26 Wickham Drive. This budget does not reflect the need to reduce the mill rate. We cannot have economic development, the highest taxes in the valley. I would suggest that there are many changes that could be made to reduce spending. The cost of renovations from the restaurant should be paid at the golf course, should be paid by the owner of the restaurant. A $2,500 video can be eliminated and ask for donations for the video. Economic development has not shown any ability to increase the grand list, and all expenditures should be eliminated. We have supported study after study and with nothing to show for it. No money, other than the secretary, should be allocated for economic development. If needed, it should be a case-by-case expenditure. The $25,000 for Performing Arts Master Plan should be paid for by the Performing Arts nonprofit, since they are a separate entity from the town. The $25,000 for the revision to the zoning regulation should be done by staff in the planning department, and the website construction for $8,000 should be eliminated, since the town has a website, and that's sufficient. All support for Main Street Partnership, $50,000, should be eliminated, since they are a nonprofit organization not affiliated with the town. Funding for conferences should be on a case-by-case expenditure and not in the planning budget. The police department needs a part-time records clerk, and this could be paid for with the money allocated for Main Street Partnership. With the marijuana factory coming online, the increase of housing, concerts, and the increase in gathering permits where organizations require the police, there will be a need for more police. The library still has many water leaks in the building, and the ceiling in the stairwell at the back of Town Hall has a large area of mold from leaks. The police department has sewer smells from the drain and requires a gallon of water flushed in each drain every month to eliminate the smell. Maintenance should be a priority in the budget. Most of the stamp budget can be reduced by using electronic payments. Recently, there was an article in a magazine that compared the mill rate in various towns. West Hartford, 36.30 mills. Granby, 34.83 mills. Glastonbury, 35.10 mills. Canton, 26.91. Avon, 26.32. Farmington, 24.07. And Simsbury heads the list with 38.51. The estimated property tax for a $300,000 home in West Hartford is $10,890. Granby, $10,449. Glastonbury, $10,530. Canton, $8,073. Avon, $7,896. Farmington, $7,221. And Simsbury tops the list with $11,553. Until we become competitive with the surrounding towns, there will not be any economic development, and fewer people will be buying homes in Simsbury, and companies will not elect to come to Simsbury. This budget can be reduced when the priorities for expenditures are based on need, not greed, and I'll post my comments on Simsbury.com, www.simsbury.com, and Simsbury Patch for your review. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Robert Kalishman, Simsbury, Kalechman, went around for effect. I wasn't coming tonight. I wasn't gonna come out for the budget. Then I heard a rumor about 4 or 5 days ago that we were gonna delete 2 uniformed policemen from our Simsbury Police Department. I scratched my head and I said, we have marijuana coming to town. Incidentally, Moonbeam in California, he made a statement. He says the worst thing that ever could happen to California is to start legalizing and in manufacturing marijuana in California. That was Moonbeam, very liberal governor. But getting back to my thing, so I was under the impression that being, and I'll say it now, that being that we have this cancer in town, and just about every citizen that has anything to do with the town and has the town to heart is against it. However, the wisdom of our zoning board decided that they were going to bring it to town, and the town never had a hearing. So there's where we sit on that. So if anything, I would say for select women that I would add a narcotic bureau to the Simsbury Police Department, whose sole purpose will be to stop the traffic that's going to occur in town. They had El Chapo down in Mexico. A friend of mine was telling me, and somebody sent us a wire, that El Chapo had $18 billion in a house from drugs. So what do you think's going to happen here in town when the big boys see what's going on and they try to get their hands on a couple trucks? Now, having said that, the other thing that I'd like to point out to you is, if you recall, back in, I think, August, I mentioned the chairman of the Economic Development Committee, Mr. Deming, and that he applied to get his ticket or to pay his way to the Bushnell for a political conference, in my opinion, because it was held by the Commissioner of Environmental Protection, Mr. Estes, at the time, and it was just to get together for all the people of Estes. And we know that Deming and his wife Linda Schofield backed the Congresswoman, but I don't think it's right to take $95 from me and pay Mr. Deming to go to a political conference. Now, in addition to that, there must be other things going on, because along with this check, it's a town check, incidentally, along with this check, there was a ledger page where it was taken out of a ledger. And I looked to the top of the ledger, and I don't know what's going on, Madam First Selectwoman, but on that ledger it said Linda Schofield and Mark Deming. Are we spending more money with Miss Schofield? And this was before she was elected to the Finance Bureau. And then, if you recall, I wrote many letters asking for it, and you told me you hadn't seen any paperwork on it. And the paperwork showed up. The reason I point that out to you is the fact that I went on the computer and I was looking at some meetings that I thought maybe I would attend. And the Economic Development Commission is having a meeting on March 13th at 7:30 a.m., right? They hold them in the morning so people won't attend. I think it's done purposely, because if they're interested in the town, they ought to be able to have it in the evening, just as you serve. They ought to be able to devote their time in the evening. You hold it in the morning, and the only thing you're doing is depriving people, the public, from attending. But getting back to this, they have their call the order, and then what caught my eye, a budget request for $30,000 for a marketing study for Economic Development Task Force discussion of the request, proposed allocation, and specific deliverable to the town. Here we are in dire need, and we're giving money so they can attend meetings, and now we're going to give $30,000 for another study. And let me ask one of the board, how many millions have we spent on charrettes? That's a French word for study. How many millions? I know of 1 million we spent, and then the Hartford is just spending a ton of money with Hiram Peck for another study. And incidentally, Mr. Peck attends these meetings and pushes them. And I think the leadership that we have from the Republicans now, and Ms. Hasse, who is the liaison to that committee, I think that we ought to have more oversight out of there. Now, I'm not just pointing my finger at one political party, because I'm certain if one party's doing it and the good old boys are getting away with it, the other party must be doing it and the good old boys are getting away with it. And here we are trying to come up with a budget, and I've been of the opinion, every year that we have the budget study, I've been of the opinion that we should be lowering the taxes, not keeping them even. Because what you have is, you have evaluation, reevaluation, and that comes in, and that helps you keep your tax at a good base. And this is, we should be lowering the taxes, not hiring the taxes. And this thing that we need it, like in Hartford, we need it, we need it, we need it. We don't need it. We don't need it. And we told Mr. Malloy, we sent a message to the governor, we don't need it, but he decided, he knows what's best for us. And our congressmen and our senators, which incidentally are all Democratic, what have they done? Tax after tax after tax. And then the thing that everybody will say, well, you're standing up there, you want more tax money to pay for 2 more officers. Sure, I want more tax money to pay for 2 more officers, because I know where we're going with this thing. You're planning on the performing arts is going to get more money, so Mr. Ryan can do his thing. You're planning on Jerry, Mr. Toner, is going to get more money for his golf course and the good old boys. And the thing that troubles me, we have the children that every year their rate goes up to swim, the golfers get a free ride. And when I grew up and where I come from, the parks were for the kids, were for the children. They weren't for the benefit of the grown-ups. The grown-ups would pay their own way. But we had programs for children. I don't see everybody that goes up there swimming, all the children, they pay their own way. I don't see the town saying, oh, we're going to cut it, or we gave lovers marriage certificates free. I don't see giving any of the children free swimming lessons. And I just think that frivolously, we're not being wise in the money that we spend. And certainly, we don't have money to spend on economic development or the performing arts, and the rumor is that they're coming in with another $50,000 or $100,000 loan to tide them over. And I'm going to close. And I just think that what's going on here with the taxes is totally wrong. And we have that performing arts thing. We formed that 501c society. And let me ask you all a question, because one of these days you're going to be asked to vote on it. How soon is it that with the 501c that we start paying a director, the chairman of the 501c, who now is Mr. Ryan, how soon is it that we vote to pay him $100,000 a year to be chairman of the 501c? That's coming.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Anyone else who'd like to address the board? Thank you all for being here, and thank the board for all of your recommendations and questions. I'll begin tonight with an overview of the budget. I would ask that you take a look at the first handout, which is the items that the board had directed be added to the wish list, which is items that we wanted to talk further about. If you could just take a moment to look at that list. I think some folks had called to make sure some things were on the list. I think we have everything that was requested, but if we missed anything, please let us know. So if we could just take a minute, I'll just basically go through. The first item is a new item that is called a budget correction for Social Security. That was added by Sean in looking at some of the numbers that we had in our original budget. In light of some of the changes that we made, he suggested that that would be an item that we should consider adding back in. The next was the clerk for the Board of Assessment Appeals that was requested. Parks facility maintenance, there was discussion that should be added back in because instead of the open space funding account, the part-time clerk position was added back as a request. Main Street full funding, add back of $10,000. The zoning regulations update, add back of $25,000. The fully funding, the EDC marketing plan at $30,000, that would be $5,000. I did speak to the chairman of the EDC, and he had indicated that the commission had requested $30,000 for the slash marketing plan and the task force. So that was what was in their budget, and that is what I had checked back with them, and would fully fund that item. There was discussion that some folks wanted to add additional hours to the communications specialist for helping with the maintenance of the websites. We discussed a Books on Bike program. I think that was mine. I added back. The additional building and grounds custodial, that was requested by our Public Works Director. Special professional support for energy maintenance and support services, that also was requested from our Public Works Director. We did eliminate the full-time administrative assistant, so that's an item to restore that position. The salt and road drainage supplies, that's not an add back. If it hasn't been cut from the budget, but if the board chooses to cut to make up for other items, that would be the amount that would need to be add back. And an additional item that was looked at last year, in which the Public Works Director said if we needed additional items, that's the leaf collection of $12,000.
I had a question.
Yes.
And this maybe goes to Tom. Tom, is the DPW Professional Support Energy Management Support Service the item referenced by the?
No, it's not.
That's already in your budget. The email that's in your budget. So
That's in CNR. The letter that the board received.
That was originally a package that was CNR that was moved to capital. And that's for a specific study for solar.
And we haven't cut that yet.
It's in the budget.
Not yet.
All
We haven't
right.
cut that yet, or we haven't cut it?
And we haven't cut that yet at all.
It's still in the budget as of 5/50.
Okay.
My question might make us cut that.
Yes.
So paying Social Security isn't an option. So
Well, we're gonna
why
get-
is that on the wish list?
Yeah, and I apologize, it should have been included in the original, but when I was going back to do a deep dive on the analysis of the contractual services, I realized the prior collective bargaining agreement settlements, I realized my predecessor had not increased the Social Security line
Okay.
for this budget line item, so we needed to be, I think it even says in our budget, I'm estimating we'd be at 690 anyway. We're gonna need to be about 693 next year, and it's budgeted 675.
The reason we added it to this list is because I didn't want to make any changes to the budget from our last budget. I didn't want to confuse anyone, so we wanted to make sure that anything new, we haven't touched the budget from what was originally recommended. So what we did is try to put everything on one page, so
No, and that's
there were no
fine.
changes.
I'm not blaming anybody or upset about it. It's just that's not really a wish list. We gotta find a way to get that back in there somewhere.
Yeah, and I wanted to, let's do one thing at a time. So if there's anything missing from the list, let's try to get everything on the table.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Sure. Is John done?
I'm done.
Okay.
On the library, the teen librarian, is that
That was already in the recommended budget.
already in the recommended thing? Because I remember we discussed that as a wish list item, but as long as it's still.
It's in the budget.
Okay.
Yes.
I have
Yeah.
a follow-up to the Social Security impact on this year's budget to that item, Sean? In other words, if that was discovered, it wasn't added up, do we have
It's
a?
included, right, and when we get to the last of the memos there, it is included in the amount we're gonna need for the rest of this fiscal year for
It's in that roll-up.
FY14.
Okay.
It is included at 15,000
Okay.
for this year. And in fact, the budget did reflect that, it just wasn't increased in the FY15 budget. Your budget package shows that in the FY14 estimate.
Right.
But,
Okay.
yeah, we are gonna need 15,000 this year. That's part of a global, and we can talk about that when we get to that too. Transfer from reserves for the settled agreement.
But it wasn't budgeted last year because
Correct.
it wasn't
Exactly right.
exactly my question. Thank
That's
you.
right, right.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful if we just get everything on the table so that we'll know what the overview of what we're discussing.
And we can always go back to it, but this would be helpful to have it.
And this is not including the police officer, which
Well,
was
I'm getting
only-
to that.
Okay.
That was the second question that the board asked. So here's the list. If anyone thinks of anything as we're discussing, I just want to keep that separate. Okay, so then the board did ask me to do two things. One, to have a discussion with the Board of Ed about funding the part-time school resource officer. The Board of Ed said they would consider it, and the superintendent said he would bring that back, so I don't have an answer for you. But I have communicated to the superintendent, and he is going to review that request and discuss it with the Board of Ed. So I did have that discussion. I did also ask the Board of Finance to put on their agenda our budget update, so I will be discussing our budget as results of this meeting with the Board of Finance on Tuesday as well. Yes.
Did the Board of Ed indicate when they could let us know? Like, when are they meeting next?
They're
What kind of
meeting with the
decision?
Board of Finance on Tuesday, Wednesday.
Wednesday.
And after that meeting, they said they would try to get some indication as to whether they could or couldn't. The other item, I think we all suggested that we wanted to see what the budget looked like if we were to fill the vacant police officer position. So that's the purpose of the second memo. So what I did was I asked Sean to include the addition of the full-time officer and what that would require us to add back to the budget and what that would do to our bottom line. So if you'll see that the total amount added back to the budget as presented, so the 1.5 budget, with the restoration of that position would bring the town budget to an increase of 2.04. So that's number one. So if this board tonight was comfortable with everything and wanted to restore that position, the board could act on the request of a 2% budget increase. I then, as I indicated to the board I would do, I then went back and worked with staff to see were there any additional cuts that we could do to help bring that number down. The items, I'll do the second column. You'll see that there's a CCM labor reporter service for, it's not a lot of money, but it's $1,160. Staff recommended that because we use Labor Council, we could ask Labor Council to provide that information. We could eliminate that. So I would suggest that go to the elimination column. That's really not something that we need to really discuss. That's something staff is comfortable eliminating. If you skip the next two items, you'll go down to reduce landfill contractual services. And Tom Roy is here, and he suggested that that line item, because of changes in payments, could be reduced by $18,000. So that is not something I took, it's something that was given to me. So I'm bringing it to the board as an opportunity for a reduction. So that frees up some room in the budget or offsets the police officer position, whichever the board chooses. The next item was, and thank you to our new library director, the next two items are savings in the library as a result of resignations we've received to date. So since our last budget workshop, we have received some retirement letters, so we can budget the differential between filling that position and with a new step and the retiree. So those savings can be calculated into our budget unless anyone has any objections. So I would assume those three savings. The other recommendations that bring us back to 1.5 are reducing the salt budget. We had increased the salt budget by $60,000, and this would bring it back to a $20,000 increase. So it would still be an increase, it just wouldn't be as big an increase. We don't know what's going to happen with salt next year. I think the intent of our staff, and I want to thank Tom for that, was to put more money in that account because, we felt that as a result of this year, we should add more money and buy assurance that we won't need it next year, because that's what happens when you put more money in the salt budget, then you won't need it. If you don't put it in, then you'll need it. So we did take a look at that. The other item that has come up before is there is, leaf collection, and Tom said that is an item that is not beneficial to the entire town. There's a significant number of residents that use it, but many residents that don't use it. So that item is $12,000. So that would bring, if you accepted all those changes, it would bring it back down to a 1.59% budget. If you were to accept some of those, and not all of them, it would reduce the budgets accordingly. So, so that is my report based on what was recommended at the last budget workshop. Any questions on that?
Is Tom gonna present, or can you just tell us how that happens, the salt in the landfill?
Well, I don't know, I just
I
think
mean,
something
I'm-
was great
I'm
that
just-
we
no, I just wanna
increased the
know-
salt budget, there's no winter next year, so.
Right.
There's a chance here, Mary.
So I really just wanna know, like, what that actually looks like.
The salt projection, you know, we know what we use in a given year, we know what we would typically use. Last year, the salt was reduced, I think, based upon 1 year where we had a reduction, not a history of 5 years that we have in terms of how much we need to use. And because of that, the number this year, even in a perfect world, was not at a number I felt comfortable with. Then you add on top of it the winter that we've had. The number, I think originally it was about $52,000 less than I had originally requested. Now, if things hold through this winter without any additional significant storms, we're going to exceed our budget this year by $75,000 for salt. So we would have been, if we had kept things where they should have been, at about $25,000 excess.
So now you've replenished your salt supply.
Putting us back on target, which
Right.
through a normal winter, we would be good and comfortable, provided that these salt bid prices that we don't know at this time for next year stay relatively close to what they have been over the past 3 years. With this winter being so abnormal, salt prices next year may be increased.
Okay. And the landfill?
The landfill account, we had money allocated for doing some repairs and updates to the building we have out there, which is not the, it's in need of some care, and this is basically deferring some of that maintenance, deferring some, we always do a little bit of paving just to kind of keep the different asphalt areas up and running. So it's basically trimming back on those numbers, trimming back on numbers we had for, we use that money for recycling material. When our crews go out and install a new catch basin, they haul back all of the material they dug out back to the shop. And it builds up into a big pile, and every year or every other year, we crush that, and we actually make our own backfill material that we will use to fill in the hole we just dug up. It may just be, again, that gets, either we are able to do less of that, depending upon.
Well, my understanding is the payment schedules was different, and you were experiencing some savings in that as well. So.
Overall, the landfill account has gone down because we're no longer doing what's called the transportation offset. Years ago, when the Mid-Connecticut project was developed, 26 years ago, there was a plan at that time to build a transfer station in this region. With the transfer station never having been built, the town used to pay a transportation offset to our local trash haulers to make up for the additional haul lanes. When the Mid-Connecticut project sunsetted, that obligation went away. So we no longer receive the income from CRA, but we also no longer have that expenditure.
Okay.
So some of that is captured in
I
that
just
amount.
want to know what the, whether it was services or,
Yep.
okay.
And then in terms of the leaf collection, it would, it is what it is.
Yeah, I
We
know.
currently
It's
do
like-
bags, leaf collection, we do one pass.
How many people?
Yeah.
I'd say my guess is 30 to 40% of residents participate in it.
Are you
not-
noticing that decreasing, Tom, over the years? I'm just, because
It's
it's,
been really consistent, in my opinion.
Follow
Sure.
up to it. So back to this salt, with the addition of the 20,000, is that now more, does that represent the 5-year average you were talking about?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
maybe I could make a suggestion to move to a new base that the board's comfortable with and try to move the discussions a little bit. If the board is unanimous in restoring the officer position, and we can take the labor reporter service, the landfill savings, the attrition in the library, add back in the Social Security, what would that bring the budget to?
John,
Just as a
hold this.
starting point with the base.
Could you pull that up on the percentage?
Okay, yeah.
Is the board comfortable with that, knowing, having that information?
On the library one, is there a critical need to refill those positions?
They are being refilled.
Oh, they are being refilled.
That's the difference
It's the same,
between,
okay. I just want to make sure that we're covered for the,
yes,
when they absolutely.
yes. This is not a staff changes, this is the, and what would have happened is, had we not gotten the, and we would never count on those resignations, but had we not gotten those staffing changes now, we would have had more money in the budget that was not spent last year. So the fact that we have them, we can budget for them.
Okay.
So it's just a timing issue as opposed to staffing issue.
Mary, so just to clarify, you said add back the social security and,
Add back the officer
right, that's already.
and the social security, and then eliminate the CCM labor reporter service, the landfill savings, and the attrition savings in those two accounts.
The last 3 lines there? Correct.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
add back.
Just for a starting point, so that the board will have some sense of where we are.
So it's
That's very good.
1.9.
There's a starting point.
But it's 1.98% just as a starting.
9.8. Thank you.
Mary, can we talk about Sean Kimball's memo from
Yes.
6 to us? I think that's going to help frame the rest of the evening's conversation.
So, what we asked Sean to provide, and also we'll be providing this to the Board of Finance as well, is if you look at 2011-12, the board had a number of contracts that were not settled. What we did is, as we always do, we budget for what the town thinks that we will settle those contracts for. We returned that year, we settled no contracts that year. We returned $370,000 to the general fund surplus account. In 2012, we budgeted for what we thought we were going to need, and we also increased the salaries in our budget and retro payouts, and we returned $62,954 to the general fund. In fiscal year 13-14, the contingency was significantly lower than it should have been, based on the settlement of the contracts. So what happened was, the amount that was returned to the general fund should have been carried forward in a separate line item and was not carried forward. What that means is, it's really just an accounting purpose, because what happened was those funds just went back to the general fund, and then now will have to be reappropriated. So in order to try to come up with a number, we are looking just for to bring the salary increases and the retro payouts. We will that line item will need $205,000 more. Now, that's not the amount that we're going to ask for transfer for, because we do have some vacancies and we do have some retirements. So it's really too early for us to tell you what that request is going to be, because we haven't finished the year. But that's probably close, and we also have other accounts. We also will need salt transfers, you heard earlier, and we also need an overtime transfer. The Board of Finance has also hired Bloom Shapiro to do some additional accounting, so they'll be looking for a transfer for $14,000 for that line item. And we'll be having some discussion later in the evening. The Parks and Rec Commission also needs to close their deficit, and that looks like right now that will be about $255,000. So it's really too early to know what the final transfers will be, but that clarifies the mystery of what went back and how it was budgeted.
No,
And then if I could just finish the memo, going through the memo. So what we also did is try to review the pension contributions, OPEB contributions, insurance plan designs, and contribution changes. And this is where I really want to give credit to our staff and our town employees. The renegotiated contracts that include a defined contribution plan and a increases in the pension has reduced our line item by $28,000. So that is a significant amount of money. We are budgeting $5,000 in savings next year and $158,000 savings the following year. So, those are big numbers, and that's a significant savings to our town by our employees. The OPEB contributions, this is the first time that the town has been successful in working with our staff. We think it's a great benefit that our employees will be getting medical benefits upon their retirement. However, for the first time, they're contributing 1%. Well, that 1% has generated $45,000, and that's not fully implemented yet. So, that's a significant savings as well, and that's how we're able to bring in budgets as low as we are. Finally, the insurance plan design and contribution changes. This is really a home run for the town and the Board of Ed. Over the last 6 years, we've negotiated joint carriers, and we went from having a number of carriers and the town, the Board of Ed, using different carriers and different timeframes and different contracts to consolidating one carrier, and that will save the town $600,000. So if you added back all of those...
Mary, if I might, there was one other piece in the negotiations, and that was actual negotiation of existing plan levels for employees and also their contributions. And those, the very last piece on this addresses some of the savings that we received from that. You can see the $30,000 from one part of it. The changes to just one union's benefit plan design resulted in another fairly large increase. So our employees have really come a long way to helping us get to the right balance in terms of employee contributions as a result of these contracts.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
So, thank you for that, I appreciate that explanation. So my question is, and I get the prior years and the transfers and all that, what's the gross impact of salaries on this year's budget? So not with benefits, not with all the savings, but just...
It's in my memo to the board, my original memo to the board. My transmittal memo, it said that the salary increases, pension, workers' comp, and property insurance budgeted as recommended by our advisors is $565,534.
Right, so what's the salaries?
What's the salary line item?
Just the salaries.
You want to strip out just the salaries?
Yeah. It's like 488, right?
I don't think we broke it out.
I had asked Sean for this previously.
443,988.
There we go. Right, okay. I appreciate that. Okay, so where I'm going with this, Mary, is it, to no fault of anybody that's still here or works for the town, our base is off, right? I mean, on a budgetary basis, our base was off. We budgeted $18,347,575 last year, based on what the budget director told us, based on our discussions and everything else. Turns out, again, to no fault of anybody sitting up here, or anybody that currently works for the town, that number was wrong.
The number is carried forward. You're right, to correct that, we've carried forwarded a larger number.
So we're fixing it.
We are fixing it.
Everybody's
We're
doing the
budgeting
right thing, we're
100%.
fixing it. And
That's
again,
right.
to no fault of anybody's own that's
Correct.
sitting here. So the challenge that we have is we're starting from the wrong base. Now, we're starting from the right base it was wrong last year, but from an actual dollars spent, we're gonna spend 18.6 million this year, right? That's the right number.
It's still an increase. We're still spending more this year than we did last year, if you adopt the budget as is.
Forget about this year's, forget about what you've proposed this year. So what we're actually gonna spend in fiscal 14 is 18.6 million and change, which is about 210,000 more than we actually budgeted for, right? Now, there's some savings and everything else, but we're paying for salary increases in the 15 budget that we should have already had in the 14 budget, again, to no fault of anybody here. So it's really hard to do this and look at a percentage increase because we're starting at the wrong darn number. We should be starting at 18.6 million, and you've recommended, and again, I give you a lot of credit, 18.6 million.
Correct.
So no increase over
Well-
what we actually are spending. No increase.
Pretty good.
That's pretty damn good. Again.
What'd you
not-
say? Wanna raise it?
Yeah, just.
But I think we're all in a really hard spot, and again, because we're talking about cutting things like police officers, and we're talking about cutting things like contractual services that we all know we need. Are we really approaching this the right way? Should we be wrapping our minds around 18.6 million and starting from there in terms of what do we need to spend to keep this town running from that?
Yeah,
I know it's going to show a nasty percentage, but
I think it's a policy decision.
I'm
You
not
think-
worried about the percentage. I'm
I
worried about spending
understand.
the dollars the
And I
right way in the right
And I
spot.
appreciate that. And I think that's just a policy decision. I think that, I think you heard a couple comments earlier in public audience that our taxes are too high.
Yep.
I have specifically said to this board, I brought in a budget that wouldn't raise taxes. I have said to the Board of Finance, you cannot raise taxes this year.
Yep.
I think we all ran on the mill rate's too high.
We did.
So, we need to make some tough choices, and you're right. There are some tough choices in here. And, you can't just run back and ask for more money all the time. Sometimes you have to make those choices. And I think that if we want to be competitive and if we think economic development, again, policy choices, if we think economic development is important, if we think keeping our mill rate competitive is important,
I agree with you.
then I think restoring the officer, I think that that's something I'm comfortable with.
I agree.
And I think that the base that I said to you, the 1.98%, I would be comfortable with, because I do think that doesn't cut the road salt. It restores the officer position. Yes, maybe it doesn't get us all the other things we want, but I feel comfortable bringing forward that budget. If the Board of Ed funds half that position, which they should, because they're using half the position, and which they've indicated they are willing to do, they will consider it. That will bring the budget back down to a 1.5, which I think is a responsible budget. And I think it says to our taxpayers, these are tough years until we get that mill rate under control, which we have no control over, but we get blamed for it. We have to do our part, so.
No, and I absolutely, I agree with you, Mary. And it's just, this is tough because 1.98, to put it bluntly, we're going to get killed for that because it's a high percentage, right? But
Not as high as it will go if you add back more stuff.
what I'm suggesting is I'm going with you on this. I think that we need to do this all together because it's the right thing. We're in, I think, an extraordinary situation in that we got some bad advice and we've got to fix it. And again, none of us are accountants, none of us are financial experts here. We're here to do what's right for the town. And now that we've recognized the problem, which I commend you for finding and bringing out and addressing, and let's get this fixed. So I think this is going to take some conversation with the Board of Finance to say, hey guys, look, 18.3 million is not the starting point, boys and girls. It's 18.6. You're going to have to transfer us that money because, and I'm sure they'll be willing to do that. And they're going to have to go along with us on this, and hopefully they'll be able to figure out what to do with the mill rate
So
from there.
so the board is comfortable with the 1.98%?
I personally am in that realm because I think that we're going and doing the right things. Again, funding police officers is what we should, making sure that we have enough salt so that we don't just go back to the Board of Finance next year and say, hey, we shorted it again 40 grand. We knew this was going to happen, but we had no choice because we had to hit a number. That's not what we're here for. To me, that doesn't make any sense.
90, sorry, does not include the 40 grand being added back in. That was not.
That was never cut.
Yeah, it's not out,
That was
right?
never cut.
Includes
It
the
includes,
40. Includes.
it
yeah,
actually
yeah.
includes
Yeah.
60.
It does.
It actually includes 60,000.
My only question, Mary, is I believe that the chief asked us for the overtime to come back in
Yeah,
as
but
well.
he doesn't need it because we
Okay.
brought back the officer.
You have less
Good, that's-
overtime when you have a full-time.
So we're good?
I thought those two we needed.
Well, you have some retirements. If you want to go through that line item, we can do that. I don't think you want to go there.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot 2 meetings in a row, but I just want to make sure whatever we're adding back,
We're gonna be tight, but
Okay.
we can make it.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Exactly, around retirement, so we're coming in.
Yeah, and we didn't want to nickel and dime Chief's budget.
No,
He
I'm
does a
not-
great
not
job.
asking
and-
to. I just want to
and
make
so we
sure,
just-
because I know that there was some
I mean,
concern
he'll
at the last
always ask
meeting.
you for more money, as he should. He does a great job.
Always have to give a person back.
So if we leave now, we're all set.
Yeah, go ahead, it'll be fine.
Before.
Does that include the social security line item as well?
That was due to,
Social Security, I have 18,000 added back here.
Is that 198 include the social security in?
Yeah.
That's what I just circled there, yep.
I don't want to confuse anyone.
No, I'm not trying to.
No, I just want to make sure everybody understands where we are at this point. The 1.98 includes all of the things that we talked about that were added back to the budget, that's in the budget, and the reductions that we talked about in all the workshops. It includes fully funding the 60,000 in the road. It takes back the additional cuts that I just went through tonight. And,
Leaf collection as well?
no, just those,
leaf collection and
those
salt
four
stand.
items that I.
Just the 4 items.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, so I
Okay,
just want to make sure, because I know we're doing a lot of things here. So eliminating the CCM labor reporter service.
That's definitely out, right?
That's a cut.
That's
The
definitely out.
landfill, contractual services, the attrition, and the library, those 2 line items.
So those are, all 4 of those.
The
are
other
definitely
2 are left in,
Okay.
okay? So I don't want to confuse anyone. So that is, and then on the second page, the wish list item, the only thing it takes off that item is the correction for social security.
So we're still looking at all these other.
Correct.
Oh, the leaf collection at the bottom, right?
Yeah, and you can take that off too.
Yeah, we can take those
And
two.
the salt, that was not a cut, so it doesn't have to be
Right, so-
restored.
Yeah, so the top one and the last 2 are off that list.
Right.
What is it, Sean, what is the total spend for that? What's just the bottom line, because I know it's the 1.98.
18,710, 118.
So, and again, just not to belabor my point that nobody wants to hear me say from a budgetary standpoint, but I will anyway. So that's only up 90 grand from what we're actually gonna spend in fiscal 14. So that's not this gigantic increase.
Correct.
And that's absorbing the $500,000+ of salaries and pension and everything
Correct.
else.
Yep, it is.
So that's, I know to folks that are looking at it, it feels like it feels like almost $400,000 from what we budgeted, but it's not the right way to look at it. You gotta look at it from the 18.6. You can't look at it from the 18.3. In my opinion.
No, I hear what you're saying. I'm trying to, I just want to remind, I don't want to complicate things. I just want to remind us that we have a couple outstanding items. One is, if the Board of Ed does offset 40,000, then the board can either further reduce the budget as presented as 40,000, or you can take 40,000 off of these items and fund those. So I do want to give you some flexibility and some options. That's number one. Number two, what was number two? We do still have to go show a 1% budget reduction and a 0.5% budget reduction. So, Jim, you may want to stay in the room, right? Because we do have to show those. I think, based on my previous discussions with the Board of Finance and previous meetings, I do think they're sympathetic to the challenges that we have, but out of respect for the Board of Finance, we do have to show those cuts. I do have to present those as Board of Selectmen recommendations as well.
Before we get to that point,
Yeah.
Mary, can we go through, on the wish list, are any of those items included in the 1.9%?
There. Yes, the budget correction for Social Security we just added.
Yeah.
First
Okay.
and the last 2.
And the salt and drainage supplies were not cut, so those do not have to be restored. And the leaf collection was never cut, so that does not have to be restored. The parks facilities maintenance, I think, we didn't budget that, but we did budget $10,000 more in a different line item. So, and $635, where's our assessor? It's such a little amount that you might want to just.
I'm going to be supporting that, I'm just
Well-
saying that.
And actually, I have a suggestion on that. I think we have them tape the meetings and then have somebody else transcribe them.
But we still have to pay the
It doesn't matter.
transcriber. Yeah, same price. Yeah.
Well, unless it's internal staff that's here or an intern or something.
So that's,
It's contractual.
Oh, labor contracts. Okay. Okay.
so the
But-
35,000 is going back into.
No, none of these are funded.
No, I know, but if it did, that 35,000 would go back to Parks and Rec. Where's
Yes.
that going?
Parks and Rec,
Maintenance
for
funds.
maintenance.
That was the one we saw in the presentation, right? That was the tree that was potentially going to be funded by open space?
Yes.
The open space
Oh,
funds,
that one. I was
Yes.
trying to figure out where it was coming back.
so it's not in the operating budget?
It's not in the operating budget. It's additional funding we'd like to start putting more money in our parks with the budgets that are tight. We haven't been able to.
Yeah.
But we were hoping that as additional funding came in through some of the sale of the open space, that we could use some of that funding to pay for some of the parks. So it would actually go back to maintain the things that we own, which gets back to maintenance. And I think that, we've had tough budgets, but we've done a really good job, the board has done with, restoring some of those maintenance items. I think we recognize that the road budgets, the salt budgets, those are things that, we need to fund over time, and we have restored those.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear, this is money that they thought they had coming last year.
They didn't have it last year.
But
it's money they would like.
They were expecting, I mean, it didn't
Yeah.
come in.
And Cheryl, I did ask Jerry to come and present the Parks and Rec budget, so let me know at what point the board would like to have that conversation.
Yeah, oh, thank you. All right, but the question before us now is the starting point, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, didn't we have some questions on?
So
just
before we start going to individual little
Well, I just want to make sure,
other things.
can I just ask, is the board comfortable with the 1.98? Can we leave that alone for right now? Everybody's comfortable with what's in
My
there so far?
opinion, that's our base.
Okay.
That's where, in my opinion, where we're
Okay.
starting from.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but that's what
Okay,
I'm
so everybody's
comfortable
comfortable right now with leaving that alone?
with. I am.
Okay, thank you. Yes, question, Cheryl?
No, I was just wondering if because there's other questions that I had based on just flipping through the pages. Did you ever find the answer to the teen center question?
Yeah, I have answers to both.
That would be great.
So the first
But
question.
I want to finish Mary's motion.
No, I want to just, when the boards ask a question, I want to go back to, I think Cheryl asked a question, and I also asked the question about the teen center. There was $8,000
Right,
budgeted for the teen center, and the question was, now that the teen center is no longer operational, what would happen to those funds? And those funds are matched for the youth service grant and can be used by the social service department and the Parks and Rec department. And by limiting the $8,000, we would not get the grant. So those funds are being used by social services. They used to be used by the teen center, but now they're being used to fund teen center, not teen center
So how
activities.
come we're showing it as teen center?
It's just notation that needed to be
Okay.
changed.
We'll have to change the name.
We have
That
to
makes
change
sense.
the line item.
Because,
I was going to recommend, just calling it youth services matching.
We should probably
Yeah.
stick that in the social services budget too,
so that
shouldn't
should
we?
be social services. 'cause
Well,
they're
it's
spending-
administered through Mickey. She fills out the grant application and she
that's where
administers
we're-
it. So with Jerry, so.
I'm trying to help your budget out, Mary. It'll stick $8,000 over in her budget.
I know, I'm just saying, if it goes into
Even
social
I can't do
services,
that.
Trying to help you.
I know, thank you.
And how much of a grant do we?
It's a matching grant.
Well, it's
a
actually,
match.
and there's
So-
actually two parts to it. I talked to Mickey about this 2 days ago. It's actually a $14,000 youth services grant,
Yep.
but also a $6,250 enhanced youth services grant on top of that. So you would actually lose both if you got rid of that. So it's actually, you almost get 2 or 3 for 1 for your dollar.
Can I go back to?
And which program?
I think Cheryl
does
has
she
another
use?
question.
Well, in the
Where
past,
does the money
before
go
the teen
in?
center closed, it was used for the teen center. I think
Right, but now it's not.
In this fiscal year, I know she said they're going to use the balance of that account to pay for community
Booklets, they're going to use it for suicide booklets and training
As everybody mentioned,
materials for the parents who
teen
come.
issue.
Oh, and they may use it, one of the things Mickey mentioned to me, the Community of Concerns pamphlet that they do, that's probably going to be a request of hers to be on the Community for Care's agenda, because she wants to fund that based on what Ken presented.
I
It hasn't been
I
approved,
just wanted
though.
to see where it
Yeah.
was going, because, I just didn't get that.
Yeah, it's up to Mickey to make.
But I definitely think changing the title would be clear. You don't want something that says teen center.
Yeah, you should.
But nothing's been
Everybody knows isn't
approved.
there.
She has the money, she hasn't, it's her decision to allocate it.
Oh, absolutely.
And she may come to the Community of Concern with recommendations for our endorsement. I
But we'll make a
expect that.
notation.
Really, my only question was why it says teen center when there isn't one.
Right, no, yeah, it used to be the teen center, yeah.
That's,
I think Cheryl has another question, I'm sorry.
did I have another?
You had two
A lot
questions?
of questions.
I did, and I've been calling people all week. I can't even remember. And I just want to thank everybody who took my phone calls, answering my questions, which was great. I think. Oh, the other thing was the conference budget, which Sean and I discussed. because there was an increase in it, but he told me that that was inclusive of all the departments' conferences and stuff, and I guess my question was, why isn't it showing in each department as their education and conference allowance rather than?
We're actually going to talk to the finance director. It was done independently, but then there was no oversight of it, so they were overexpended in some departments and not using them in other departments. So the idea was to put it in one account, and then it could be administered, and Tom could work with the department heads to make sure that those who needed to go actually went.
Right.
And those who needed certification actually went. So it was a better way to keep track of making sure our staff actually participate in continuing ed. But we're going to work with our new finance director because we think there's a better way to show line items, who needs to go for certification purposes.
Right.
And who needs to go to, for other purposes. So.
Well, and in the course of our conversation, he said that the funds that had been set aside for this year for education had already been expended.
Yeah.
And so, which led me to, well, maybe that isn't enough. If there are things that people actually need to do to be recertified or licensed and, all the things they have to do, then, we should be showing the real number.
Yeah, and we're going to try to put a better plan together with our finance director to show which are mandatory certifications, so the board will actually see what the bottom line budget is, and then who's going to what conferences, and make sure we rotate them as well.
Okay.
So, good suggestions, and we think next year we can bring back a better detailed report. So that,
Okay.
I think it's important that our residents know and that the board knows that our staff is very well trained and that, they're keeping track of freedom of information seminars and exactly what kinds of things are making them better department heads. So I think.
Again, I just
yeah,
wanted
no,
to
and
make sure it was in the right place.
Yep, no, I got you.
And that it was covering the right things for each department.
Yeah, got it.
And you already answered that, my other one, so go ahead.
Metro Hartford Alliance?
Oh, yes, things that were not included, the EDC did not recommend Metro Hartford Alliance, so it did not come forward in Hiram's budget. I don't know, Hiram, if you want to talk about how much that costs and maybe why the EDC didn't include it.
Well, and I also should piggyback, say I'm confused, because I was copied on the letter that went to you that had welcoming us, and so that's why
Yeah,
I was.
but it was not included, I passed that along to the EDC and they did not recommend funding it. So that's an item. How much was
They're not
that?
going to welcome us anymore?
We won't be getting any more of those letters. Hiram, do you know how much it is?
I was going to say, for my memory.
Yeah.
is
I
correct,
copied the
45.
board and I copied the EDC, but they considered it and they did not recommend it.
4105 is the number that sticks in my head, but I'm not sure that's exactly right.
Other questions?
So we just what's next, Mary? Are we going through the wish list and saying, yes, we want it, no, we don't? Where's the money coming from? Or?
How about not? How about
Okay.
folks who feel strongly about taking them off the list make a pitch? And I do want to just say that Jerry is here and has additional information, and again, I don't know where that fits in, if you want to hear that presentation now, or if you want to wait till.
Well, because some of that has to do with the deficit, running the deficit there.
Yeah.
If you want to do that now, that's fine.
I just hate to get sidetracked because we've been talking about the wish list
I want to deal
stuff.
with
All right.
what you want to get through, so.
Not to keep Jerry here forever, but we're kind of already into the wish list.
Right.
That's fine, I just want to put some options on the table.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I'd prefer to go through the wish list and then have those people address those items. Just start at the top and work our way down, or whichever way we want to go.
Okay.
I have a couple of sort of comments, and it's not adding to the wish list, but maybe some suggestions of moving some things from one place to another. So we can do that, I suppose, within this wish list discussion.
Or you can raise them now, that's
You want me
fine.
to put it out there right now? All right, the one was the tourism funding, and I know we had a little bit of discussion about this in terms of the
The video?
tech
video.
and programming supplies being for the video. And I think my suggestion would be that those monies, and as we have in our wish list an item to fully fund the EDC marketing plan, the proposal out of the phase one of the marketing study for a video, that came out of that. So coordination of efforts to market the town, I think, would be best.
They are coordinated, the efforts are coordinated, and it's something I that I directed EDC to do, and Mark Deming's going to do that at their next meeting, talk about how all the budgets fit together. But the funding was put in tourism because tourism wanted to coordinate that through SCTV. So they requested the funding. So it's the same amount of funding to do the video where it is. It's not material because it's going to all, they're all working together with Main Street and tourism and EDC.
So I guess back to a lot of the discussions that have been had about what was going to be the next steps for marketing the town was, I was not aware of any coordinated effort regarding that marketing. I would think that it would be, and again, with the task force and folks that have some of the marketing backgrounds, that it would be a good idea to instead of having tourism move forward with a video.
No, that's what the discussion was at EDC, is that the task force was going to work with Main Street and EDC and tourism.
So tourism wasn't part of.
Well, Main Street talked to them. Somebody did because they said that they could do
I was at the meeting, they just want to make a video.
with,
No, the meeting I was at, they want to make a video. They wanted to spend 25 grand at the meeting I had, and I talked them way down. They wanted that with $25,000 video, which would have been a heck of a video, but.
my understanding is that all these efforts were going to be coordinated.
They should, you're right, they
The
should be.
marketing plan
Should be. You're
and
absolutely
the
right.
task force plan and the
I think you're absolutely
video and the Main Street, and Main Street was going to work with, I mean, that's why we funded them,
Yes.
is that they were going to work to help with the website and coordinate the website and the video. So if
you're right.
we're, if we're not coordinated, then we should just,
So I think
Start
the
cutting
suggestion would maybe be is instead of putting it in a tourism line item and giving them impaired unilateral control over the video, is put it in the EDC line item, have EDC and the task force work with tourism to make sure they're included, so that all parties are in. Because my opinion, if you give it to tourism, they can go do whatever they want with it, and they don't have to include the folks from EDC.
And this goes back to the point I was talking about you could make a shell of a video and have different aspects that target different messaging within those different videos.
that was
And
my
so-
understanding with Dominique Avery. They were going to utilize the services of SCTV, and that was, they were going to do a big video for a lot less money, and they were going to work with the EDC to do that. So, I mean, I don't care where you put it, or if you want to not fund it, but that's
No, I
what
just
the
think it would
purpose of
be-
it is.
If it's all going towards that one pot of money and one goal, I think it makes sense to have those monies put in the Economic Development Commission and coordinate what ends up being the end result of all marketing for the town. So that's just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I
there.
have no problem with that.
Yeah, it makes some sense to put them all together.
Yeah. And then for clarification, on the 15,000 being added for the communication specialist, I know we talked about, and it's actually on this same page, diverting some of the $8,000. So we were going to fund the website at the 1,000 and diverting some of those monies towards the communication specialist?
Yeah.
So are we actually, so we're reducing this advertising down to 1,000 and some of the 15 on the wish list is coming from those monies?
Yeah, that would be transferred. And also, when I talked to Sean today, is we thought that the conversation was that all the departments really want to use a person. So this would be to add back
Kind of a webmaster.
kind of about 30 hours to this communication specialist. So this is adding, this is the 8,000. Well, I think it doesn't include the 8,000. This is just additional funding for that position if folks wanted to add back. So this does not include the 8.
That doesn't include the
No.
Have we already switched the 7 from
We have
there?
not switched, we have not, again.
The 8 is still in
The
the
8
budget.
is still in the
The 8's still
EDC
in the
budget.
Yeah, it's still in the budget.
So if the board wanted to, we could put that 7, we could separate the line items.
Yeah.
And move, if the board's comfortable with that, we could move the 7, leave the 1,000 for the website, and then move the 7,000 to the specialist. Because that was reflective, I think, of what they said.
Or just show it as a reduction to the wish list and then we can figure out,
Okay, yeah.
where we want to put that.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yep, I got it.
What that was.
So that would be 11. Okay.
So just
I
a
didn't have
point of
flags with
clarification,
me,
can
so I bent my
do you want me to
pages.
be doing these changes now, or do you want to just track them on the wish list?
Just track them
or
on the
what?
list,
You know what
because I think
Yeah.
things are moving.
Either way.
Yeah, and then we might want to add them up at the end just to
Yeah,
see what the
certainly.
net impact of
Ready to
everything
do
we've done
that,
is.
too.
Yeah, and you know what, Sean, that's actually, why don't you do a version for tonight, a version 3.7 meeting list. So Why don't we keep track of the changes that we're making tonight, so that we
Sure,
can
I've got the wish list right here. I can just.
then go back
just
and
copy
and make sure
it.
everybody's comfortable with it, and then everyone can see the changes.
Okay.
So,
This is a refreshing change from last year. This is nice.
it's great. Ron's done a great job. Okay.
Everything adds up.
I don't know, Hiram and maybe Lisa, you can, I don't recall that the EDC didn't vote to support Metro Hartford Alliance.
It was not included in their budget.
We should ask them for clarification on it. They got that
And the
meeting
only
coming
reason I
up.
ask is that was a strong recommendation out of the first phase of the marketing study.
But they
and-
didn't fund it. They
So-
specifically didn't, I remember the meeting, they did not fund it.
I think that is right. I
Yeah,
think
they did not
discuss
fund
it. I think there was a discussion back and forth.
There was.
Between Lou and Mark. They didn't fund it.
Not funding, okay, good enough.
Which was surprising, because it was
It is
recommended.
surprising, yeah.
Well, it was
Especially from
surprising
that
too,
Lou George
because
guy.
the consultant that we did the Hartford with suggested that we consider that again as well. I think that's why the discussion came up again.
Yeah.
But they decided not to.
So we have
I mean,
two
if you're gonna spare
recommendations from two different
$4,000,
groups.
I'm sure they'd take it, but I don't think that was the question.
All right, I throw that out there only because if we've had recommendations from the folks from the Hartford study and from the marketing study, that maybe we should be considering that.
I got a couple of quick things.
Yeah, go, because I can't find my turn pages here, so.
I know I already asked about this, but I'm still confused and too many numbers. On the central admin advertising line item, we're still doing the 7,000.
Where are
So
you?
it's in the central admin budget. It's 52,400. I asked about this and I think we talked about it. The note was wrong, but the number's still the same.
I don't know, I crossed it out at our last meeting.
I crossed the
'cause
note
I
out.
thought somebody said we were taking it out.
Because last year, the note said anticipated increase in job postings due to retirements, right, which makes perfect sense to me. And we had 7,000. Well, if we don't have increased in job postings due to retirements anymore, then it would beg the question is, does that line item need to be reduced?
I think I would defer to Tom,
Okay.
ask him what
Yeah.
number he's comfortable
I'm
at.
not looking to start hacking things up, but.
No, I can't, I would defer to Tom for anticipated, and Sean.
That note, right,
You're all right, Sean, you know
well,
where
that's
I am.
right, we still need, that's not an increase, right, so it was an increase last year to 7,000. Recommending keeping it flat this year at 7,000. I think Tom and I are comfortable at the 7,000 for that line item.
Because we still have a lot of retirements and job
There's
postings.
still been a lot of turnover. There has been. And
All
I
right.
don't see a big difference between last year and this year so far.
You guys are the ones that deal with it. I'm not gonna argue, just wanted to clarify.
And that still keeps us at the 1.98?
Yep.
So that's included in there.
It's already in the
Okay.
budget.
Unfortunately, Mary, there went my solution to fund my next point, which is, I think we gotta put the 10 grand back for Main Street. I mean, we continue to ask them to do more and more for the town. They're gonna be partnered with the Economic Development Task Force, and EDC, videos, websites, everything else.
And just to clarify, I know it's on the agenda for the EDC meeting on Thursday, but Mark Deming is very clear about deliverables and making sure that each of the items are coordinated with deadlines and deliverables. So
Absolutely.
I don't know if there'll be additional savings, once everybody's gone through those line items and figured out where the money was going to be spent, but
If they come back to us and they say, hey, look, we're comfortable with the 10 because of X, Y, and Z, okay. But right now, I think we need to have it back on the plus column at least until we hear otherwise. That's just my opinion.
okay, I will, let me just suggest a way to keep this organized. The items that folks are comfortable with is the 1.9 so far, plus changing the line item 1,000 in the EDC account and the 7,000 going to the specialist account.
And Mary, that's not, I mean, that's all
There's
still
no
in the budget, right?
revenue
So
neut-
that's
no,
neutral.
Revenue neutral.
Right.
Budget neutral. And then the other item was the tourism line item going to the EDC for 2,700.
So that's revenue neutral too.
And
Was
that's
the whole
revenue neutral.
2,700 the video? I thought they had broken out 700. Was it 2,000 and?
It's all in there is one item,
It is?
so I don't know.
Sorry, I thought maybe I
that's-
imagined that.
It was 2,000 and then the 700 was a separate item, but the total was 27.
What was the 700
What's the 700 for?
With their other expenses, they have clerk,
Okay, so then,
Right, that's what I
you're
thought.
right, you're right,
I was
you're
gonna
right,
say, I didn't
you're right.
want
all
to
right,
take
so
away
Should only be
the-
the budget, yeah.
2,000.
2,000, that's revenue neutral.
Yes.
Other items so far, I have a plus 10,000 for Main Street for discussion.
Yep.
Okay.
Could you please add a plus $635?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I make a suggestion that the plus $635 go to the acceptable column? Does anyone have a problem?
I'm
with
fine with
adding?
that.
Fine. Mhm.
Could you add that to the 198 and see where that brings us?
198. I'm taking a wild guess on that, but 198.
Gotta go up 4 more
Round
decimals.
that way.
Call it 100.
Right over to 199.
It's .003.
I want to see it.
Thanks for that.
I know.
Shoot, I lost my spot.
635, all right, so that, here's his request, and if I just change that,
That better not.
it stays 1.98.
Revenue
Oh.
neutral.
Great.
That was close.
I've got another, I found another one of my folded pages here. This goes to Engineering Department, tab 5.
This one for you, Jeff.
Second page in. So the third item down is the consultant budget, and this isn't to pick specifically on Rich Sawicki, but the comment was around, and I realize there's a possibility, of course, being busy with more economic development and everything like that, but I would suggest that we fund that flat year to year, and if it is that we have development that comes in and it calls for us to have an increase, it certainly would be something that could be realized in terms of funding for that, because we would have the development that would support it. But, you know, we've got a fully capable new full-time guy working for us, and I think, you know, to keep that at the 10 versus the 16 would be.
Yeah,
my
I'm not going to
recommendation.
support that, just because, the reason it's in here at 6 is because we have a number of big projects coming online, particularly school projects, particularly the senior center projects. There's a number of big items that Rich has already worked on, that the transition, $6,000 is not a lot of money. It really is not going to buy a lot of Rich's time, but it'll allow us to have that transition, I think, is in the best interest of the town. And just great to have on board and doing a great job, but, you know, I think you can't be, there's only a certain amount of capacity a town has, so if you're going to add all these capital projects, and you're going to add all these other economic development initiatives, our grand list grew, I think that we need a transition period, and 6,000 is not a lot of money, so I would not support eliminating that.
And I understand, we had Rich's, you know, transition for the 6 months or so. I guess my question would then go back to, at times when we've had a lot of, you know, sort of a swell of projects, have we had some additional funding on that line item? And if we could sort of look to that, I mean, we don't have the senior center actually voted on and online, so.
No, we have a number of capital projects that are in our capital budget for next year that will come online.
Right. So I just, a suggestion, as I said, I'm.
I'll put it
looking
on
to-
the list of
Yeah.
minus 6,000.
Has Rich agreed to provide those services?
Absolutely.
Are we all set with that, or?
Yes.
I didn't know if that was.
He didn't actually retire, he just kind of.
Well, I keep seeing him, I
Well,
just didn't know for sure.
You know, in
I
some,
was-
Party for him.
in some key positions, I think that the finance director for the Board of Ed, the transition was 1.5 years. So,
Are they still transitioning?
but
They're working on
I'm
the
just
buddy
saying.
system.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And my last is, and I'm looking for this stupid folded page right now, it was back to the page that had the 7,000 for the advertising. The planning department requested an intern in their department, and I was wondering if we could take an intern. I'm not gonna be able to find what page it's on.
and what's the amount for the intern?
Tab 1, it's the
amount- the intern
second, first pink and just behind it.
3,000, Mary.
Pardon me?
There were 2 for 3,000.
3,000 each?
Tab 1,
Total?
just behind the first
So
pink.
you want to add that 3,000?
Well, and what I was going to suggest is there's something out of
So much
the
easier.
central admin for interns there that we might be able to take a summer intern from there and lend them over to Hiram's department for some work there, and then we don't have to have it impact the budget, but at least gives that support there.
Planning has a lot on its plate.
So you could get 2 for the price of
That's that one.
1.
7,000 is,
So we wouldn't be adding anything. addition?
No, I
Or
guess
just work
if we
with-
funded the
Just
two
sharing.
he
We would
requested
be
at
giving what he
three.
requested and.
It
Or you want to add 3,000?
No, it would be taking the
Moving 3,000.
7,000 down to 4. In,
I'm not sure where you are.
What page you on?
Nancy, what-
I'm on page,
Central
actually,
admin,
central
seasonal.
admin, so
I
we're
don't think that's
tab,
all interns though, Sean, is it?
tab 1.
Seasonal? Yeah.
Summer and seasonal interns.
Oh, there it is, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that one that's 7,000?
Personnel/benefits, central admin.
The only thing I would
No.
just say that there are summer vacations, and in some cases, the intern substitutes for the secretary, and there's someone in the office at all times. So by taking that funding out, that you would be closing the first selectman's office in some cases.
So could we work, though, that person's, in other words, is 7,000 for a single person?
I don't know.
It's very different summers. You've had more than one that.
Yeah, and then,
The question really begs, can the first selectman's office and the planning department share some interns? That's really what we're gonna do. So
And I guess it-
nobody's
No,
left
I mean,
short.
you don't have to transfer the funding. If you're saying
You guys
work it
share
out,
interns.
we
I
can
think
work
is
it
what we're
out.
looking
But
at.
I would hesitate to start moving money and then be
Share
short.
the interns, I think is what everybody's
Well,
asking.
no, I mean, and I would say you'd want their
We wanna make
job
sure that
description to
America's
be
youth has
more
the jobs.
specifically defined, so if you could schedule the admin interns to cover vacations, but then allow for the building
We can
department
work
to
with
have
the
that.
planning department to
Just
do
share
that.
'em.
I think we can,
Okay,
we'll do
awesome.
what we can on that.
That help a little bit? I mean,
Because
not
then-
trying to leave you guys short in the first selectman's office.
No,
but
I appreciate
we got-
that. If you leave the flexibility in,
It
we hear
needs
what
by
the board says.
definition leave us short,
Hiram's
there's no
all
doubt.
backed up, so-
But the fact is that I think that that's,
we'll
you know,
work it.
we can make it work.
We'll work it out.
We're not actually moving it in the budget.
No, we're not going to move it.
Just leave it there.
I mean, Mary, to your point at the last meeting, I mean, outside of that, there's not a whole heck of a lot else to talk about in terms
No.
of going down. I mean, everything else is salaries, benefits, buildings,
That was all I had, too, so
yeah.
just.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to come up with some flexibility for the board, and
I know this is a painful process for everyone out there to watch, but this is, kind of how we need to do it. But
We're also frankly playing a little catch-up because of the previous issues that now we have to address, and we want to embed it into the budget, which I think is a good thing to do.
But I mean, I look down at the 1.99 or whatever it is now. I mean, we're funding our basic services. We're funding the police department. We're funding social services. We're paving our roads. We're keeping all the offices open. We're trying to help out the land use offices a little bit in some creative ways. I mean, it's not just about the end number, and I know people get fired up about it and frustrated. But, you know, we have an obligation to keep the town open and to keep the town running and to answer the phones and provide the service we're supposed to provide. My opinion is I think we're pretty close.
so, let me just ask the board another question. So if we are comfortable at the 1.98, we have some other items to discuss, but if we're comfortable at the 1.98, should the, question for the board is, should the Board of Ed fund the officer position at 40,000? Does the board want to reduce the budget to the 1.5? Or do you want to add back
Things back.
items to bring you back up to 1.98?
So,
Before we make
I'm
that
sorry.
decision, can we do the Parks and Rec thing? Because I
Yes,
really
I think that's
want to hear
important.
what they have to say.
I've offered 3 times to
I
say
know-
to do it.
No, and I
so-
know you
argue
have.
this
I'm
time.
just thinking
I'm
if we're
sorry.
at a good spot now.
we were on a roll on wish list
I know,
stuff.
and I
I'm
wanted
sorry.
to get through that other stuff.
Just a quick question for the bench here. From the wish list, we talked about, of course, the first item and the last two we've already discussed.
Yep.
Are there any other changes right now that are being recommended?
Well,
from
we
that wish
approved the
list?
second item, 635
That's
for
right.
the
Right.
SS.
Okay, the
So it's the first
635.
two items.
And we're holding.
We're
I
hold-
think we're holding.
Okay, got it.
We're holding until the discussion with Parks and Rec.
Oh, it's on the, I now have a form.
Yes,
under
everybody's,
The communication specialist, did we?
we didn't do anything.
We didn't do
We
anything. on
haven't
that.
added.
Okay.
We
We-
just transferred the original 7 from.
Okay,
But
right.
that was revenue neutral.
Right.
This is an additional.
That's an
It hasn't
additional,
been
right.
added.
All
I
right.
think the answer to Mary's question on the officer with the Board of Ed lies in a couple of those items.
Well, I think it would be helpful, I think we need to go to the Parks and Rec,
Yes.
but I think that it would be helpful for me, two things. One, the 1.98 seems to be a place that everyone's comfortable with. I'd like a list of potential add-backs should the Board of Ed fund that half position, and if the board wants to fund additional items for that amount. And then I need to bring you back to the 1% budget and the 0.5% budget. So if we can accomplish those items, discussions tonight, that I think we'll be in very good shape. Comfortable? Everybody's comfortable with that process?
Yep.
Okay.
What I didn't see on there, though, is the Metro Hartford Alliance.
Oh, I didn't know you
You wanna
wanted
do
to
that
add it
as
to the
an
list, to the wish list?
That's what, it's my suggestion. I know it didn't
Why
come
don't you
forward
put
from
it
the
in there?
EDC, but
Ask them one more time and make sure they're sure.
For consideration, not
Yeah,
as
I
an approved,
just-
just as a wish list,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
So you would like it right here on the?
Yeah.
Add it up there.
Yep, and that was 4105?
4105.
4100, let's call it? We can find $5.
With a, ask them to confirm they're sure they don't want that.
Not that they might get it, but they're.
well, that's, yeah.
I mean, we're not going to add it back if they don't want it, obviously.
Is there anything else that we neglected to put on that you would like to discuss? Anything additional that is not on here that you'd like to discuss?
At this point, I'd like to
Okay.
hear Park and Rec
Okay.
and then
Okay.
see what our new world.
I'm sure everybody in the audience agrees with that.
And I know you said you wouldn't support, but are we going to put down other recommendations?
Yes, that's on my list. The
Yeah.
only other, I had a minus 6,000
For consulting?
for
engineering.
consulting. We got,
Can I bring up a topic to get on the wish list?
so does the board have any objection to opening discussion? No,
I thought
okay,
you
go
were
ahead,
getting
Chief.
some stuff.
I am.
Yeah.
He's the chief.
It follows that, on the same avenue that you're following, that if the Board of Education, in fact, does go in and pay half of the officer, is it possible that I could get on the wish list to use that money to bring back to the part-time clerk?
Why don't we clarify the amount for part-time clerk, Sean, the
22.
What, oh, 20, yeah, 22.
that doesn't include, it doesn't come with benefits, so there's no additional cost. Okay, thank you. We'll add this. Mary?
It's just one question of clarification. When you added back some money for attrition that we will be getting in July and October, it's for the differential,
It's only the differential.
not the base?
No, not the base.
Okay.
We clarified that with Lisa.
I
And,
thought we did.
Lisa was comfortable that that number was conservative. We didn't want to be overly aggressive, so I think this was a comfortable amount of differential. Gave you flexibility to fill your position.
Okay, that's what,
And still,
that's what we were.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that question. Jerry, come on up. Welcome back.
Good to be here.
Say it like you mean it.
And I just to recall, I don't know, you don't have any additional handouts, just what was given to the board previously. Okay. And maybe you can go over how the fees increases the revenues now to the expenditures.
I'm sorry?
The revenue fees that you're projecting, how those offset some of the costs. You walk through the fees you're proposing as well, and how they fit.
The ones that you're going to see on Monday night?
Yes.
As far as the golf course goes, and actually I've made an adjustment within the system. It should take us from a projection of 885 up to a projection of 900 for fiscal year 14-15. And that's with the understanding that we will also have a percentage increase built in the spring of 2015.
15?
On top of that?
Oh, no, Jerry sent me this
Included.
handout, so I was, it has his numbers on it.
Right.
Timing of it doesn't matter.
Right. So increased fees, golf course will take it to 900,000.
Okay.
The other, on that spreadsheet that I gave you, as far as closing that 85,000, I believe there's, and I've got, I think it's a $3,000 or $4,000 item allowing for fee increases in the spring of 15. With the understanding that season passes are primarily sold in April, May, and June for that year. So that's allowing for that increase. So you've got the, I believe the projected revenue total for the pools is 190, I'm going to say you have it, I don't have it in front of me, 195, I think, or 190?
195, you got.
195, and then it would allow for another increase, with the understanding that there'd be a fee increase in the spring of a year from now.
Basically, because you get two cracks at the increases
Exactly.
during a town fiscal year. right?
Exactly.
So is that the 3,000 to 4,000?
Yes, that's correct.
I'll make some more copies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hold a second there?
Wait, I'm sorry, I asked
We're
a
going to get
question.
some additional copies.
So you say 3,000 to 4,000 addition, that includes the swimming?
That's correct.
Okay, sorry.
No, thank you. But thank you for your offer.
On that list, we're gonna all get copies of, you had broken out administration as a separate item. How does that fit into each particular section of Parks and Rec? I mean, is that administration of the pools, the golf course, the camps, everything? Or is that just administration of a particular thing? Or is that all your administrative?
I'm not 100% sure. Now, are we talking about just the revenue fund, or there's a split on our administrative account between the general fund and revenue fund? There are two administrative accounts.
I'm just thinking of the one you gave me yesterday, or whatever it was. You had a line, the first line.
That's the revenue fund. And actually, well, both of those spreadsheets, general fund and revenue fund, both have an administration account. The administrative account in the revenue fund, the two full-time salaries include myself and our administrative secretary. It includes 70% of our salary in the revenue fund. The administrative account in the general fund shows 30% of our salary.
Okay.
It shows
Thank you.
100% of all fringe benefits go into the revenue fund, and I don't. There's no
Thank you.
allowance for fringe benefits in the general fund.
Yeah. And how did you decide how that breaks out? Does that?
That's not my
You're
decision.
just gonna have to bear with me for a second.
No, it's fine.
And I'm
It's fine.
because I'm trying to figure out how much things cost, really.
Sure.
And administration is part of that.
Right.
So it should be allocated to a particular program. If you can. I mean, I know, but we discussed that, with the golf course. And trying to separate out golf course revenues and expenses to the golf course, so they can be
Right.
handled separately.
And basically, the golf course is pretty much on a standalone basis within the budget. You've got, the golf course maintenance and pro shop under the revenue fund. You've got revenues identified separately. So that's basically, they're identified on a, they're isolated within the revenue fund.
So, can you tell me in a general way where the deficit comes from? I mean, because a lot of this you're showing, if I just compare, camp's revenue to camp expenses, the revenues exceed expenses.
That's correct.
So, and the same with the golf course. So I'm
Right.
trying to figure out why it doesn't balance.
Well, I think the toughest, the challenge that the revenue fund has had is the administrative expense. And 3 years ago, there was an increase. That percentage, what prior to 2010-11 was 50-50. It went to 70-30. So that increased the administrative burden, I should say, on the revenue fund of about $50,000. And then at the same time, there had been a $66,000 subsidy from the Board of Finance, from the general fund, to subsidize the revenue fund, and that was eliminated. So we had effectively a swing of about $115,000 that has carried over for 3 years now.
Yeah, and I appreciated you explaining that to me, but that doesn't account for the entire deficit, right?
No.
So where's?
Well, over the span of 3 years, I mean, if you took 115 times, the 3 years, it would pretty much tell you why we're there.
So every year, that's the deficit?
Well, if you have that spreadsheet that I sent you, I think it showed you we had a deficit 1 year of 60, one of 90, and last year was very high. It was about 160 or 180. And that was the difference in those 3 years. Last year, they said we had lost, instead of an 8-week summer, we had a 7-week, the reduction of 1 week, which cost us about $50,000 in revenue.
Yeah, it's the whole week at camp, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
Right.
that's huge.
That's correct.
It's a lot of revenue.
Now, we had
But
issues
you
with
weren't
weather.
paying any, I mean, you weren't paying salaries for that week, and you weren't paying anything else for that
True,
week,
but
I
they're all,
assume.
those camps are profitable
Extremely profitable.
programs.
Yeah, no, I
to us.
know,
Yeah.
they're profitable. I'm just trying
Yeah.
to figure it
No,
out.
oh,
'cause I'm-
understood.
Because somehow that money is gonna have to get made up somewhere, and
I guess the question, to follow on what you're saying, is where is that money coming from? Are you asking for a line item of support? Or, I mean, because we can't just budget deficit.
No, I've tried to
Right.
identify for next year, when I gave you that sheet with the difference between expense cuts and revenue increases, it can close the gap for next year.
Right.
As far as that 3-year deficit, I don't have a plan for that. I think that's why that committee is formed that's looking at it.
So you do have a plan for next year, just the
Yes.
3-year plan, the subcommittee will be looking to address that. So
Plan,
for
yeah.
next year, we're set.
Yeah,
We
I mean,
think-
if you took on that
well,
spreadsheet,
we're only
what I've
set
given.
because we're still gonna have a deficit for next year too, right?
yeah.
You've divided
We're
it out over
expecting-
3 years.
You're expecting a deficit.
Of some fashion, yes.
So we're not set for next year, we're still planning on another deficit.
Yeah. That's what
I've given, I gave
No, the
a,
budget he's presenting to you for next fiscal year is balancing
right.
the accounts.
If you take those.
Doesn't make up for
Per
the
year,
past practice.
just
A
for
year,
the.
for the year, that's correct.
It doesn't
Right.
make up for
Make
the
up for the
past.
past
with
deficit.
not.
Perfect.
Problem is, there's
In
two
a
kinds
way-
of deficits here, right? There's a fund balance deficit, so there's a fund. The special
Correct.
revenue fund has had money in it. That money is all gone. That's one
Right.
deficit. The
That's
other is an
correct.
operating deficit.
Correct.
Right.
So the operating deficit you've addressed, and we've asked you a lot of questions about your revenue items. So are you
Right.
increasing fees? Are you changing golf course fees? That's going to address your operating.
Correct.
In theory,
Correct.
provided we don't
done.
we don't lose a week of camp again, and we don't get killed for rain or whatever else. That should balance the operating budget, which shouldn't put any further pressure on the fund.
Correct.
Now, if this board approves a transfer request to the Board of Finance, we're gonna make the special revenue fund whole,
Correct.
because we theoretically
Have
have
to.
to. We have
Correct.
to do it. So, if you hit zero and we hit zero, next year you're gonna come back to us and the fund's gonna have $0 in it, which would be a win, because we haven't done that in a few years, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what we're all shooting for here,
Yeah,
right?
no, since that adjustment was made, we have not broken even, that's correct.
So, I feel I'm not trying to jump in on you, but, so you're comfortable with the revenue items giving us a shot at getting to zero next year?
You know, it's a shot. There's no guarantees. I mean,
How comfortable
I
are
think a lot of things have to go right.
To just follow up on that theme, the statistics you gave us, and
Yeah.
which, you know, are very telling, are going down every year. I mean, every year you've had a decrease in golf course revenue, rounds played, aquatic facility revenue. The only thing that's gone up is the ice rink revenue. So I guess I'm not sure how we're gonna make that up with the decreases that have, you know, they've been proven year after year here. You know, you've given us 5 years here, and they're not going up. So,
That's correct.
you know,
Well, I could just say that one of the things that we've challenged Jerry and the subcommittee to look at is reducing the overhead costs
Yeah.
and coming up with creative ways to do that. Whether that means mothballing Simsbury Farms, moving staff back in the winter, saving some overhead costs. We had anticipated some savings with the new construction of the new facility. We're not seeing those savings, so we're trying to figure out why aren't we experiencing some of those overhead again savings. We've got to start being very creative in bringing new revenue in. And I think one of the things you see here is a line item to allow the public to rent out the Apple Barn, because you're exactly right, Cheryl.
Which I think
We
would
could
be-
put any numbers,
Yeah.
if I could just finish,
Sorry,
if we
sorry.
could put any numbers down and hope, but hope is not a strategy. So we need to come up with a strategy that brings new revenue in, or reduces our expenditures, and we need to reduce our expenses. So I think that, one of the items, Jerry's correct, the administrative allocations are high, but there is no capital costs here. So the general fund has assumed all the capital costs. So that was sort of,
There's
I think
that too.
our last finance director, Kevin Kane, the reason that the allocation was made the way it was certainly to challenge reduction of overhead expenses, but to counter some of the pressure that was being recommended by the Board of Finance to put capital into the special revenue fund. So it was really a compromise that we wouldn't put the capital in, but we would allocate a lot of the costs that were included in here. the memorial pool, the other non-Simsbury Farms costs are covered in the general fund budget. And that, that's a philosophical discussion about what's the base level of services that we need to provide, and then what are the extra services that people should buy a la carte. And, that we always come back to, what are the basic services we want to make sure that everybody in town can do and can have, regardless of whether what they can afford. So, just to get back to how we got to where we were, because I know you don't have the perspective of how we got here, so I'm trying to give you some of the background. But I think, the conversation, certainly the subcommittee, is important because we have to have some hard conversations about how we're going to allocate the costs, how we're going to reduce, in my mind, expenses and overhead, and, how we're going to reallocate going forward. What's our base level of services we want to make sure we offer to everyone, and then how are we going to pay for those? So.
That's exactly
No,
right.
I apologize for interrupting. I just want to
That's
say.
it. No apology necessary.
I thought
Just-
the apple barn idea was a great idea for
Which
renting
one?
it out.
Going to private
Renting,
groups?
yeah.
Or
Private
shutting
groups.
it?
No, going to private groups.
Yeah.
I agree. I think there's more upside there. I think shutting it would be kind of last resort. I think there's
Right.
opportunity, so why not? I would say that's the right direction to go
It
in.
would be, yeah,
Sean and then Nancy.
try.
So I think I brought this up before, and just, Jerry, I don't think you were there. Quite honestly, I think, hopefully, maybe to allay Cheryl's concerns, and quite honestly, I think all of ours, we probably need to see on a monthly basis, just to see these numbers, just to see how is revenue flowing. Do we need to make adjustments midterm? What adjustments can we make? I think we need to, whether it be on a subcommittee basis or at the Board of Selectmen, even if we just get it in our packet, whatever it may be. And I mean, I have complete faith in you to handle it down there, but I just think because we're kind of changing the tires on the bus while it's moving right now with this subcommittee, we just need to have a lot of dialogue so that we're all tuned into it constantly. You got our support when you need it, so that we're not waiting until September and we go, oh no, golf rounds are down 25%, what do we do? That's too late.
I appreciate it. And actually going back to a time when Kevin Kane was here, he used to do that. He used to prepare that. One of the problems we face with it is the fiscal year versus our year. And because our revenues are so heavily weighted to those last really 2 months of the fiscal year, and we've had situations where literally in June, or that last week in June, a good weekend versus a bad weekend is $15,000 to $20,000 when you factor in golf and swimming, and so that's sort of the thing that we face. I think it's good. I try and look. Our staff looks at year to year where we were now, or where we are now versus where we were a year ago. And although there's variables, it's usually a pretty good indicator. But I agree with you. I think it is a good way to go. It's just, we're really relying on such a concentrated area to capture those revenues that
I understand. I mean, I think a year-over-year comparison is probably what we need, and then, the trends, if you any kind of trend analysis you want to do based on your experience, whether it be 5-year or year-over-year, whatever it is, just to keep the numbers and the perspective in front of us, again, we can continue to make suggestions. If the subcommittee has ideas midstream, can we implement them midstream? Can we make changes? Which may not instantaneously pay dividends, but it gives us a jump on keeping us at zero, quite honestly, which I think is the goal. This is kind of like when we were talking to the PAC board a couple of years ago, is just get us to zero, and then we're going to fix it from there, right? I mean, that's what we're all shooting for, because this is clearly a huge asset to the town. We need to continue to do this. We need to continue to invest in it. We need to continue to make sure that it's providing the services. But it's definitely a challenge for all of us right now.
And I think Cheryl's point earlier was a good one in that, if we're seeing a decrease in some areas, then maybe we need to make some corrections and adjustments in those areas, and I think that monitoring will help us do that.
I would almost
Nancy
see
and
us
Mike.
wanting to get
Mike and then Nancy.
I've been called worse. A monthly update from all the different departments, year to date. Here's where I'm going. Here's what's going on, and any special notes. It's rained for the past 3 weeks, so.
And I think before Sean has a heart attack, I think we'll communicate that to our new finance director. And,
Let him have a heart attack.
It's a good project for the new guy to figure out. That's exactly right.
But yeah, I think we'll be getting I think you'll be very pleased with some of the new reporting formats and measures and updates that the board will be getting.
Good.
Nancy?
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and my comment is not to round it out on a bad note, but to assume the worst, but when you're talking about fees and making those comparisons and adjusting your rates, what kind of assumptions are you making on use? So, and to Sean's point of trending, if you are looking at this, and actually Cheryl also made the point of enrollment decreasing. So, next year, your fees are X, but what's the assumption for the use? And if you're seeing that the use has gone down, are you assuming that same sort of decrease so that you're not giving
Probably
yourself
each one we look at differently, but probably the big dog in the fight is the golf course. I mean, it accounts for roughly half of the revenues. And one of the things we've done in working with the commission, we're right now at we try and work with a 5-year average. Because things have changed so much, really over the last 10 years. It's really, when the revenue fund was initiated, there was an assumption, the way golf was going, that it would carry, and for a while it did carry the fund. That has since changed.
Mm-hmm.
So we try and base our, the assumptions on a 5-year average. And right now, actually, this past year was right at that number. So that the number that's being submitted to you is based on a 5-year average, or the average of our past 5 years of play. Now, some of that money is, it comes from different places, different categories. But to answer your question, we are at the right now. That's what we're trying to base things on.
basing it on a 5-year? Okay.
When you do that averaging for camps and things like that, do you get information from the Board of Ed, or, because they do that projection back to births,
Right.
for the school system? Do they share that with you?
They do. Yes, they
Okay.
do. Mhm.
Other questions? Comments?
No, thanks for coming in again,
Changes?
Jerry, appreciate it.
Recommendations?
The only thing I would add on the general fund side, on that facilities maintenance line item, and I know it's listed at 35,000, although I think Mary, 10,000 has put them back
I
in
did
for
put
trail
that in a
maintenance,
different-
which was part of that
Right.
that facilities line item. About roughly 10,000 was dedicated to the greenway maintenance. The only thing I would say is that there's really two areas that line item is dedicated to. One is and I think I've said before, the tree work that we get put on notice for from our open space. We have, the town has roughly 2,200 acres of open space, much of it adjacent to private homeowners. That tree work is areas that we're put on notice for. It can account anywhere from 15,000 up to a high of probably 35 or 40 a couple of years ago after the storm. The second area is every year we add new playground surfacing to our playgrounds. It's probably about a $5,000 or $6,000 item, depending on other conditions. Both of them, I think, we certainly have, at the very least, an exposure, certainly not a safety concern, particularly with our playground areas. I mean, your statistics will tell you 70% of playground injuries are from falls, and this is kind of a basic one to take care of. That's where it's traditionally been funded, and it's totally, certainly your call, but it's not one I want to overlook.
So since we gave you 10 of 35, will you take what? You want to pick a number? You don't need the full 25 if you could get some.
Well, you can also say, I mean, it's almost a policy decision on what you're going to tell people that live adjacent to open space. When they call and say, I think I got a dead tree hanging over my house.
And I agree, Jerry.
We're not in that business anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think I know we wouldn't tell them that.
No, I think we have, and we'll see it with the Ethel Walker, which is the last piece of land that the town is considering to purchase. I think we're seeing a shift to stewardship, and we're going to have some serious conversations next year about what that looks like and what that means and what level. Just as we're talking about how often you want to leave the library doors open, what level do you want to maintain your trails and maintain your open space? It's great to buy it, but if you don't manage it and take care of it, then you really haven't done the town any good at all. So.
Yeah, I mean, well, the other thing is with the, with the Greenway, I mean, it's, we've always, it's great to have that canopy, the tree canopy over it, but with that comes, comes issues that's created and that require maintenance. And I think we've done our best to address them. The committee has helped us, in a lot of areas, but, those are, again, the open space, tree work and the playground surfacing are two areas that, I wouldn't want to ignore, so.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm on board with where you're going. I think we need to start finding ways to put some money in there, and I don't know
Yeah.
how much we can do this year, but
Yeah.
even if we're creeping 5,000 a year in there, just to start getting that
Well, hopefully with the sale of the hall property and the
We can take some of that
idle
out.
land still too. I mean, it's gotta come from somewhere, but yeah, I think we gotta, you're right, we really need to seriously start looking at that.
And the town is, we work very closely with the Simsbury Land Trust. I just want to give a big plug to them because we are in discussions about coordinated stewardship and maintenance, and they're very open to partnering with the town and being good stewards with us. So, and Jerry's also exploring forestry management, which will bring in revenue now that the cost of wood is going back up. We see that as a revenue source to plow back into.
It's a good idea.
It's been a long time since the town did that. I think it was back when I was here the first time.
The first time.
So hopefully that'll bring some additional revenue in as well. So we
Okay.
are exploring some additional revenue sources.
So help me out here just before we finish up with you. You had on the field maintenance, or actually the total maintenance number was a 6% increase, 6.05, and that was without the, am I looking on the wrong page?
I don't have the same, I don't think I have that same.
What line item are you?
I'm looking on the
Tab
cover
7,
sheet,
first page.
right after the number 7 tab.
So P&OS maintenance. I think a fair amount of that is salaries.
Parks and open
okay,
space
Parks and open
maintenance.
maintenance.
Yeah,
You're probably right.
so
That's
that
us.
32,350 and the 694, is that what we're putting back? I just want to know what I'm just wondering what the 35,000 is.
That's on the wish
is
list.
going back in as.
Yeah.
The 35 on the wish list is,
Actually, it's like I say, it's 25 because 10 of it is now under, at that bottom line
Ten is
item.
included in the very, so if
Yeah.
you're looking at that
Park
second page
improvements.
under tab 7, right?
Second page.
Park improvements.
Very last
The very last line has 10,000 added by the first selectman.
Okay.
And then above that, if you go about 8 lines up, you'll see that 35,000 cut
Cut.
from what Jerry asked for, a little to the left there.
Okay.
He asked for 35, she cut 35, so it's true, in fact, I have 35 on the wish list, that could be 25 to
Really
get back to
25,
where.
yeah.
That's what I was
They're two
wondering.
different things, we
Is
could
that
put it
the
as
same
25,000.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Oh, it's really
So
25.
it's 25.
Yeah.
Not 35.
Absolutely. No, if you get of that 35, 10 is what rated in the line item.
So I guess my follow-up question to that is, if you had monies and you had the greenway versus the paving for safety versus the open space, is there something you feel would be more of a priority?
It's up to him how he spends it. He can use the money to do, it's his to do the maintenance that he feels is needed. It's not allocated so much for trails. Even though it says trails, it's up to Jerry as to which is a priority.
So I guess that
So it's
piggyback,
not, is that 10,000 is not earmarked strictly for trails?
It's called trails maintenance, but it really is part of the same line item that you're, yeah. Parks improvement, so it was put there as a line item, but it was, it really is designed, we don't have anything identified that we want priority. It's really up to Jerry as the director to decide which park, which trail needs to be maintained.
so
So
our
which
last
line are you
meeting,
changing, Sean? Which line are you? No, if we put but if the 25 is coming back in, which line is going to change?
whatever one we tell them to put it in.
I could just put, I mean, if you want me to eliminate the 10 from the parks maintenance, I could put all 35 together, or I can put 25 back in the facilities maintenance and leave 10 in parks maintenance. I think if I'm understanding correctly, I think they're both used.
and I was gonna say, does it matter which gives you the most flexibility?
Yeah,
I think they're both used.
Yeah, I think they're interchangeable, it seems like.
Okay.
Change the 10 to
I just want to
35.
know what the, okay.
Well, except 10's in, and 35 isn't, so some of it's on the
Oh,
wish
sorry.
list.
Change.
25.
The wish list
Wish
has changed to
You can change the
25.
number
The
all
wish
you
list
want, but it's
changes
going to make a
to
difference on your line.
So I have one more follow-up question to that, and that was, we had discussion around some of the requests from the bike folks because of the silver designation they're putting in. Do we need to have a way that we track what would be bike? So,
We certainly have the ability to,
okay.
To do
all right,
that
as long as
internally.
that
You can separate
fulfills
that
what
out
they-
later?
absolutely.
Okay.
You can do it internally.
Okay, I just want to make sure we
Okay.
have it all in the right line, so
I don't want them coming
we're.
after us because we didn't cut the right
We
trail.
didn't-
Right.
No, that's why I'm saying, I just
A
want to know which
whole
lines
swarm of
we're,
bike people after. Yeah.
all right.
Especially if we don't pick the trails.
Any other questions?
I've added that to the wish list, but not into the budget.
Correct.
Correct.
And it's at the wish list at 25 instead of 35.
Thank you.
Other questions? Just to finish the discussion of the budget, the only item left to discuss tonight is the CNR budget, because that is part of the general fund budget. We're going to leave the CIP discussion for after Monday because, we still have to have a presentation from the Board of Finance, and there's a separate time frame. We have a later time frame for reporting CIP, so I didn't want to mix apples and oranges, so we'll have that discussion, not tonight, if that's acceptable to everybody. But the
Fine with me.
discussion, we need, just to make sure that we did have a presentation, and we did review in detail the CNR budgets, and department heads are here to answer any questions you might have. Yes.
Are we done with this?
No, but I just, before
Okay.
we go back to this,
All
the CNR is part of, it affects your budget, so if you make changes to the CNR budget, then it will affect the,
It may affect the.
it may affect the operating budget. So I just want to make sure we finish the complete discussion of the budget before we go back to this discussion, just in case there are any questions on that.
I just have a
And
question.
that's
Where's-
tab 13.
Where's the CNR line item for payment against our budget? Where's that?
And I know last time we had a request to keep track of the format, I really worked with Jeff Shea to get that done to you guys next time. So
Okay.
for now, the projects as their priority list the projects on the priority list are as they will appear in the old format, which I'll have to change it to. But the chargebacks, if you look on the second page after tab 9,
Yeah.
see the new, if you go over requested base, and ultimately requested total, those are the chargebacks, so the chargeback from 5 years ago falls off, the new one comes on at 82,640.
Okay.
And that 82,640 is what covers the 413,000.
Okay.
Give or take 415,000 that is needed for the for FY.
So, question, and I missed most of the CNR discussion, so I apologize if this is redundant, but don't we usually fund the patrol cars out of a different fund? Don't they come out of a special revenue fund? I thought we funded them somewhere else in the past.
Well, it's kind of changed on back and forth.
Okay.
It's always put in, I always put it in as a CNR,
Okay.
then it gets changed. Last year was a special fund that was put in there.
Last year, it was its own line item last year, that's a change
Right,
this
because
year.
don't we
That's-
usually sell the old ones, get a few bucks out of those, and those go to defray the cost of the new ones?
What happens is we sell those,
Down to New York or
we
whatever?
take that money, put it into a special revenue account, that pays for the unmarked cars out front.
Okay. So we're supposed- Again, I don't have any issue with this, it's just, it's a little bit different.
Process is different this year.
It is put in a different spot.
I think it has gone back and forth, but this year, I think under tighter budget constraints, I think there was an interest in trying to get it. We were able to eliminate that operating line item and put it into CNR.
Yeah, that's an expense we have to do, so I understand.
So Sean, the question I asked you about the 86124,
Yes. So what Cheryl's referring to is under the actuals. No, that's lost my tab.
It's that same page, at the bottom
Tab
of the
8.
since we're on that page.
Yep, sure.
Oh,
Oh, no, sorry, tab
Tab
9. Tab 9. And the second page, so that Cheryl was asking, as she was reading through it, she noticed in actuals in 2013, you have a large number there, 860,124. And what that is, this is, again, these are created as outputs out of our finance system. Those are additional mid-year appropriations done by the Board of Finance. And so you can, and I actually have their minutes here that show what they did. They summed to 861.24.
They funded that account.
Mid-year, they
I
fund
was just asking what it was.
any number of different things, right? And it's by definition an operational transfer. That year, in 13, there was a $254,600 school safety measures funding rate. So these are mid-year appropriations. They inflate the budget that year. They can only do this up to 1%. That's why 860 could not be $1 million.
No inflation, it's not supplement.
Sorry, also, that included in that was $400,000 that transfer
To the pension.
to the pension fund. So, and I have the minutes here for you, Cheryl, if you want to see each of them.
And they supplemented the CNR fund that year as well.
That's right.
Right.
They increased
To
it.
bring it to a higher amount.
Exactly.
So another 200.
And that's split by the Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen.
So our base went up, we used to be able to spend in the 300s, I think it was, in CNR, now we're up in the low to mid fours.
Right, exactly.
So,
And the amount that is recommended in the CNR account does fit within that guideline of the Board of
absolutely,
Finance.
yeah, no question there. Yeah, we can spend, I think, about 416, 17.
That's within the Board of Finance allocation to
see.
CNR. And then that chargeback goes back to the operating budget.
Okay.
Yeah,
Are you
because
sure?
the total town and Board of Ed spend used to be like, what, 859, and then they bumped us both up to total of $1 million, and we took an allocated increase on either side of that. And they funded, the Board of Ed funds school buses and all that out of their side, and we do police cars, and didn't we buy Tom Roy a plow last year?
Half of
So the short answer is obviously that wouldn't be something you would budget for. It's essentially.
Right.
budget
So we're buying the other half this year?
by the Board of Finance.
Well, that was my question, is why it doesn't seem to match anything else.
It's not in our budget.
Right. That's, it doesn't seem to match up with any other item.
Additional appropriations this year, you'll see that again next year.
Right.
It's not something budgeted for this year, and it's not something we have to budget for FY15. It's for those Board of
And
Finance.
they're able to do that because it's below a certain percent. If it was above a certain percent, then that would be.
Per chart.
That's why I was asking.
That was a good question.
My math is wrong, we can spend, I don't know about spending tonight, we can spend 416 and change,
That's right.
Yes.
and we've got, so we got,
There's a little, there's a little room there, and I think Jeff can speak to.
Yeah, it was 416, 250, I believe, is the limit that we were trying to stay under.
So my question is,
Which was
Chief-
last year's adopted limit.
Chief, can you get a permanent or semi-permanent radar sign for 2,800 bucks? You asked for two for 7,000, can you get one for 2,800 bucks?
I could certainly try to negotiate that.
I mean, the chargeback is there, it's a constant item in our, I mean.
Well, actually, it wouldn't even be that chargeback.
No, I already,
the
it'd
whole
be
amount.
1/5 of it. Well,
Right.
Right. So you could get both.
What was that, pages?
But I was talking about,
well, no. The total spend is, this total spend is 413,
Oh, so
450
you'd
so
only
far.
get one, and then
So if you-
chargeback would
so
go
we
up.
can- Yeah, so the total, so 2,800 divided by 5. So, I mean, it's close to 3,500 bucks. I don't know what the going rate is, but it just seems silly. If we have a little bit of capacity,
Yeah, no.
we can get a deal.
Go shopping.
It's already in our budget every year.
Just
It's-
kidding.
Go hit up camp.
'cause I don't want to go to the Board of Finance and they're like, why didn't you spend it all? We're going to take it away. And they don't want to deal with that. Again, that doesn't change the 1.98, does it? I mean,
It changes, it adds back a little bit more, but not anything that's gonna.
Well,
But there is a-
$160. What does it add us back if we do that?
Sorry, I missed the question. What was the question?
If we went up to the full amount, what's the impact on the operating budget?
on the CNR.
560 bucks.
Let me see how we have it in there at. I mean, it's an input to, at the moment, the way it's in the budget, difference between 82,640. Yeah, so it's about $600.
560.
But what does that do to our 1.98? What does that do to our 1.98 if we up it
Oh, from what, all right, there you go.
416, 250?
Yep. It would be,
Start getting into rounding.
1.98%.
Revenue neutral.
All right, so is there a consensus to add back the differential to the CNR? So we have to make that change to CNR?
I'm okay with that. I mean, that's the only one on the list that's close enough to.
Yeah,
to
no,
even
that's
let us do
fine.
that.
So, Sean, if you could add that to the
All right, so the included wish list.
consensus items.
I mean, the chief's been asking for those since, I think, longer than I've been on here, so.
Well, we try to get them every year if there's.
Paying for it,
room
repair
for it.
costs.
It's, they're used around the schools.
We did purchase some.
Yeah, we have some, but, you know, we're never short on food disasters around here either, so they're.
Excuse me, Chief, are we talking about the movable signs, or are we talking about the fixed?
We're talking about fixed.
Fixed,
The
thank
ones
you.
that were fixed.
Oh, my mistake, okay.
Fixed speed signs?
Thank you.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we'll just add that to the CNR, and then it'll be reflected in the operating budget. We could just make a change. Jeff, you're keeper of the CNR?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
So in the wish list, I'm putting the 610 as the increased chargeback.
Correct.
For FY15.
Nope, that's fine. That's why we're here.
Yeah, I love CNR.
Any other
Best deal.
CNR
It is.
changes, corrections, additions, deletions? Everybody's happy? CNR? With CNR? Okay. All right. So we'll go back to open discussions. We're still working on the town budget changes.
I think we're still back to this.
Any other questions for staff or on the numbers or anything in the budget? Okay. So working from the 1.98 consensus items, any additional changes? Going through the list. All right, do you want to move to the discussion of the $40,000 discussions with the Board of Ed? It would be helpful to have guidance from the board as to if the Board of Ed does fund the half officer, what we'll do with the differential. Will we reduce the budget as requested, or do you want to prioritize add-backs?
What does it do to us from a number standpoint? So what would that bring? Does it bring us down to 1.5 again?
Pretty close. Pretty close. I think it's kind of a wash.
159, right? Well, no, because we added some back. Can you
Yeah,
put that
we messed with it a little
40,000
bit.
reduction?
40,000 is up there as .218, right?
That's right, yeah.
That's right.
So it moves you about almost half. Well,
It moves you to
halfway. You're talking about
177.
getting to 1.5.
177,
It's about a
So-
quarter,
quarter.
almost a
Yeah.
quarter.
So option one is the 1.98 with the officer position in. Option two is the contribution by the Board of Ed, which brings us down to 1.77%.
77.
Other options? Are we done? Going once?
I mean, at that point, I'm probably willing to do this ahead of time, but especially with the Board of Ed savings, I mean, I think we seriously need to think about the part-time clerk again for the police department. Putting possibly another 5,000 or so into the parks facility maintenance budget. And then, again, I'll bring up the 10,000 for Main Street, which is approximately $40,000. I mean, when I look at it, I mean, to me, those would be probably the top three on the list to keep us at the 198 that, I mean, we're all
Can you
reasonably
give me
comfortable
those
with.
again, Sean? Your top?
So it'd be the part-time clerk at 22. Okay, 10,000 for Main Street, which brings you to 32, and then call it 8 for parks facility maintenance to round you out to an even 40. That's my opinion.
So Parks facility, which was originally in here for 35, now at 25, you're saying put in at 8?
It's at 10, so it'll bring it up to
It's at 10,
18.
so bring it up to 18.
Oh, okay.
Bring it up to 18.
So add an additional
Adding
8.
18,
Right.
because I think we have to add to that account at some point. The sooner we start, the better off we're gonna be in the future. And again, conceptually, if we're all comfortable with 1.98, I mean, again, okay, 1.77 is great, but again, are we taking care of everything we need? Well, the chief has obviously told us there's a big need with the part-time clerk. Jerry has told us for years we need to be cutting open space and maintaining that. And then again, I believe that Main Street is an entity that does return significant benefit for the town.
Just a
That's my
question,
opinion.
and I appreciate that. Question on the Main Street. I know that the EDC is having discussions as to how they want to allocate their money. We've given them, if you add all of the line items, we've given them about $78,000 in this year's budget. My preference would be if you were to add back funding, that we add it back on a line item, let them decide how they want to allocate it.
They never have, we've never done that before. In
Nope,
other words,
we haven't.
We fund Main Street, and
I also didn't fund what they asked for $5,000. They asked for $30,000 for their marketing, and they only funded $25,000. So I didn't know if, I wanted to give them the flexibility as to whether they wanted to add back
So maybe they want to
the
put
$5,000 to marketing and $5,000 to Main Street. I don't know. So that's why I'm asking for the clarification.
Interesting suggestion, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I'd like to see that. But
I'd rather not see the Main Street reduced, period, and we talked about taking the 2,000 from the videos, and so wouldn't we put that towards, so it's not adding to the wish list, but if it's going towards the marketing plan, it's putting those monies from the library towards that goal of marketing.
From tourism.
I mean, I would like to put it all in one line item, to be honest, and let them allocate it. I mean, I don't know, I don't think we have to even have a separate Main Street line item. I mean, I'm comfortable adding it all in one line item and let them allocate it as they choose.
Yeah, no,
I don't have a problem with
I mean, it's
that.
an interesting
do.
suggestion.
Because you've asked them to go back and look at Metro Hartford Alliance, maybe upon retrospect in the marketing plan recommended it, maybe they want to fund that, and maybe they're okay with spending $20,000 on the marketing plan, $4,000 for,
Main Street was going to make a presentation about what value they could do to the marketing plan, so there may be things that the marketing plan can be reduced because of the value added the Main Street can give. I don't know.
Yeah.
They were going to look at that.
I'm comfortable not micromanaging. I'm comfortable putting it all on one line item and letting them come back to us and recommending what they want to do.
And Main Street's, I don't support that. We haven't done that before. I know we have different things that are being introduced into this. If we're introducing those different things, I mean.
Well, they haven't
agency
asked for an
support-
additional $30,000 before.
Right, and that's
That's
for
a
a
lot of money.
specific goal in mind, and it really was an ask for the Phase 2 being $120,000. So
We gave them
there's
50 grand back a couple of years ago, didn't we, for the
marketing
Utah study, for the Terrafil study?
Right.
There was
as a separate line item.
We gave them 50 grand that they asked for, I believe it was. We did that on the last night, or it was either 30 or 50 grand. Because I remember Hiram ran up the stairs, he was out of breath, and you heard he was getting money that night, and he came flying in.
Well, I'm sorry.
Running downstairs.
EDC is going to meet next week, right?
Yeah, they're going to be meeting
So
Thursday.
Can't they, maybe they should say what they want, I don't know.
They can. I just go back to every year we funded Main Street. When we walk out of this meeting, the money that goes towards them goes towards FVVA.
But they haven't made a
Myers.
presentation to us. We don't know what's included in there.
I totally understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, Nance, I do, but I'm, maybe at their meeting, since they're going to discuss different funding allocations, we let them,
Yeah.
I
as
mean,
said,
can
I
we
don't-
revisit this? I mean,
We can.
We're not voting tonight.
yeah, that's what I mean.
On the
maybe
overall
we should
budget.
just
I-
wait
you know, I-
and see what they want, and then
That's
we
fine.
should discuss it again.
I mean, they're going to meet after our Monday meeting, though, which is part of the challenge.
No, they're
right?
meeting Thursday, this Thursday.
I mean,
Well, that's
No,
after Monday.
after our Monday meeting,
Oh.
yeah.
When do we have to vote on, what's our
Conceivably, we're gonna
deadline to
be-
vote on this? now?
We'll have the resolutions ready for our March 24th meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so
So we have time.
We've got some time.
Yes.
So maybe we should let them meet, and then,
Get their
It was
recommendation.
just a suggestion. I
No,
just,
no,
I
I
think
get it.
everybody's
It's-
working really hard to
yeah.
do a lot with a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And, I just think that they have the courtesy of trying to figure it all out, because maybe they can find that, maybe combined efforts, they can allocate the funding for the video within a different line item. So
I agree.
I'm very supportive, and I think, taking a look at Metro Hartford Alliance again is a good suggestion. So I'm perfectly supportive of them taking another look and recommending to us how they'd like to fund it.
Yeah, I think we should. I agree with that, Mary. My only fear would be that we got two groups that come in here and they disagree on how the money should be spent, and then they look for us to sort it out later
Well,
on.
if
I don't want to
that's-
get into that position.
Well, if that's
What
what,
are the two groups?
If Main Street disagrees with what EDC does on their funding or back and forth, and they
well,
come in here and...
EDC is town committee that.
I understand it, but
So-
again,
We can have that discussion, but
managed it
I
one
don't
way.
anticipate that's going to be a problem. I think that, they've all worked together in the past, and I think that to the credit of the commission, they really want assigned deliverables for the amount of money they're spending, and I think that's a good
I'm a
strategy.
big fan of those. I agree. So let's see what they come back with, and then we'll have some clarity on what the Board of Ed does for us anyway at that point.
I think so. I think
This might be
so.
an academic conversation
Right.
at this point, if we're all
Especially
sticking to
if
the
we have to go
198.
one and the other.
We have to go to 1, and then we have to go to
The other.
0.5. All right, so option 3, the recommendation is to allocate 22,000 to the clerk, 8,000 to parks, and 10,000 to the EDC line item with a recommendation, again, back from EDC as to
Yeah,
how they
that
want
is
to
my
fund it.
recommendation.
Is there consensus for that?
I don't know that,
Say that again, Mary?
I would just leave number 3 as an open wish list. I mean, I think it's great. Sean might have some specific ideas of what he wants, but, I would say zoning regs to that. So, I mean, we still haven't had our full wish list discussion about sort of what number 3 ends up being, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, then, can we narrow down the way, I'd like to keep us moving forward. I think the things that we're not going to fund, we should just take off the table, and then our staff will know what's still alive and what's not. So if we could,
I think zoning
We can-
zoning should stay on there. Just my personal feeling is we should at least deal with it, because it's something that's going to help all of our
well, my question,
projects
yeah,
and-
and I appreciate that. I think, Hiram, maybe you could answer, because I am concerned about us taking on too much. I mean, we have a staff of Hiram.
Right, no, I
And,
know.
allocating the money for the zoning regs, allocating money for marketing study, allocating money for, we're in the middle of this the Hartford zoning changes and the PAD. We only have one staff person. So I want to be realistic about how we're going to do all these things, and, whether maybe we should contract out zoning regs, and what would that, I just don't see everything happening with the small staff we have. So I don't know, maybe Hiram,
Yeah,
we could shed
part of
some
that
light on
25,000, Mary, is in fact to get, that was the middle bid for the consultant to
Okay.
do those. I think I used the example the other night, if I were to do that myself in-house, it'd probably take me 9 months of doing nothing else,
Okay.
which is, we just can't do that.
And you don't
based-
think that you could, that Howard can help
No.
reduce some of this
It's-
cost?
it's
Now
not-
that he's not doing zoning enforcement?
No, it's not, I mean, he's doing 2 other commissions, plus plan reviews, plus meeting with applicants, and not doing the code review. One thing I just want to tell you that, just to sort of put a little bit of salve on some of the things you've been talking about this evening, our projections, and we think they're realistic, is that in the next year or two, we're going to have $44 million worth of new development because of things we've been working hard on. We think the regulations will also help increase the amount of development that comes through the town. So we think that's a significant project and important. And it's a plus, we think, that we can generate that. And I can give you lots of examples about economic development that has in fact taken place in the last couple of years. So.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for that clarification. I was really concerned that we're piling too much on, and realistically, it wasn't, it was going to be too much. So that clarifies for me. All right, so in order to move this along, I think Sean's been brave and given us his suggestions. Anything in addition to the zoning regs that I just heard support for? Where's our new list look like?
Well, for me, I think between zoning and Main Street, that's 35, and the part-time clerk, that's 40. So
What did you come up with?
the zoning regulations and the Main Street.
That would be 47.
It is,
Oh, I'm sorry.
25 and
is the part-time town
10,
clerk something?
35.
25
I
and
feel
10.
like we need to
Oh, I'm
keep
sorry,
on-
did you say part-time clerk for the police?
She's saying for the police, she's agreeing with Sean.
Yes, I was agreeing with Sean on the,
That's over 40.
yeah, I know. I see, I don't have the calculator. He has on my-
So Cheryl, where are you at?
That's way over 40, my friend.
I know.
So are you still
I just
there?
ignored the other one.
a lot.
It's 57.
I'm sorry.
So are you keeping those 3 as your request?
Well, I guess I'm keeping the zoning in Main Street, and I don't know, I have to think about that for a minute. You go ahead, Nancy, or did you already do yours?
No, I mean, we've got no one's really talked about the communication specialist, and I guess my suggestion against that was going to be to reduce that to 7 and fund it through the money coming off of the website, and just leave that at that. But if we're over on the others, maybe we just use that 7,000 to offset.
If I could jump in and mess up some more math for you. I know we haven't talked about the day custodian, but there's actually 2 items on the wish list there. We're short-staffed in the custodial department. We're also short-staffed when we look at the length of our plow routes. You look at a standard town like Simsbury, you'd be looking at each driver would be responsible for 12 miles. Here in Simsbury, each and every driver is responsible for 14, which means at the end of each and every storm, we're working an extra 2-3 hours longer on each driver. And every year, it's difficult to add a position, but I do think it could potentially be a position that we could add custodian that would also have responsibility for assisting the highway. So it might be a way that we could get 2 needs filled.
And that's the $40,000.
Tom, I think that's fair, and to be quite honest with you, my opinion, not the board, is in any other year when we weren't having to deal with the salary correction, I think that would definitely be on the table, but I think we've got so much pressure there that I'm
And believe me, that's what I said, when the original public works budget, we came in pretty much as low as we could go, and we honored the request, which was to come in low. Not entertaining new positions, but at a certain point, we can't maintain the buildings with 6 custodians, and we can't maintain the roads with the number of people we have, so.
You're right. I mean, if part of the senior center discussion, we've got to talk about just that, because if we're at the building, we've got to be willing to have the staff to go with it.
And we've added more and more and more social programs. We've been great in adding more and more library programs, but they all take staff to set up. They all take staff to clean up. I was at Eno last night, and it was great that Westminster dropped off a truckload of lettuce, but that also meant 40 minutes for somebody to break down all the cardboard boxes that got left. And tonight, you got the light opera companies there. We had 2 people setting up for 2 hours tonight. On Monday, you're going to see a presentation for the Theater Guild teams, Eno again. It's just putting an enormous amount of pressure on a department of 6.5 people.
Is there a way, trying to think outside the box here, that... Okay,
Those boxes were crushed.
Outside the lettuce box.
Outside the lettuce box.
Outside the
I found my way
lettuce
through.
Got crushed.
To do something with Park and Recs in the winter when they're slower, can some of their people possibly help out with some of the plowing and stuff like that? It doesn't solve your problem with the building maintenance per se.
Yeah, we've done that. We've had some level of coordination on the larger storms, but not on the bigger storms. They have their own series of lots and driveways that they plow. But really, at some point, if we could add that person dedicated. And again, this would be a new position. It would be something different where we'd have somebody between both departments. But I think there's real potential there.
Well, my suggestion is, when you're considering adding things back to the operating budget, I do think there's some merit in adding things back that are ongoing. And I think, Tom makes a good case, the chief makes a good case about staffing, up at our proper levels. I would suggest if the board feels that the zoning regs, that's a one-time initiative. If the board feels very strongly, we could see, as we get toward later in the fiscal year, that we ask the Board of Finance for a transfer of funds to do that. It's a one-time event. It is offset by the increase in the revenue that we're experiencing in the grand list. My concern about putting it in the operating budget is next year we're gonna have, it's not gonna be there. And I think the purpose of an operating budget is to fund operating costs. So it's just a suggestion, but I hear there's some support for that, and I appreciate that, and I think there's a good argument for that. So that may be one way to recognize that it's not an ongoing operating cost, but something we do want to do.
I don't know if the Board of Finance is doing the cash expenditures that they've done in the last few years. I mean, that seems like a no-brainer to throw on that cash list.
Yeah, I mean, I am going to the Board of Finance on Tuesday. If there is support for the zoning regs and you'd rather not fund it in the operating budget, I'd be happy to have a discussion with the Board of Finance on Tuesday for
they
that.
funded several things.
Yeah, if they funded that as a separate item, that maybe that would provide some relief. It's a one-time expenditure.
That makes sense.
So I will, I'll report back. I'll ask about that as well. But I do think that merits exactly what we see happening. We're responding to what we're seeing. It needs to be done. It's a one-time expenditure. I'm comfortable having that conversation with the Board of Finance. I hear people struggling to get it in the operating budget, but the more you think about it, it really,
Yeah, no, fair enough. I just think it's needed.
yeah,
and
yeah,
we're-
I hear that, and I think there's consensus, so I think that's a good suggestion.
And then we're back to 40,
So then you're,
right?
yeah, you're back to 40.
Well, we haven't heard the other end of the table yet.
Yeah.
Except for Tom, we haven't funded Tom's request. And the open, I think, again, if you follow the philosophy of what should you be building into your base, we're going, if we don't do it this year, we are going to see increases in maintenance, both on our buildings and grounds,
Yeah,
and also in our maintenance, open space maintenance. I think those, and the communication specialists, I think we are seeing an increasing need, which is great to market the town and to staff our website. We just don't have the staff as our information, our technology volunteers have told us, and we just don't have the staff to do that, so. Anyway, I don't know, just share those thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
All right, so option 3, I don't think we're going to come to a resolution tonight, so I think
Don't
think
Lisa
that-
and Mike want to give their
Ladies first.
priorities? I
Well,
don't know.
I will thank the board for adding in David's $635. That was, but I do want to give credit to David. This is my 5th budget, and he always comes in just with incredibly lean budgets, and I do appreciate that, and this is a way to sort of recognize that. At this point, I don't think I'd add anything back until we see what the Board of Ed does. I don't have anything in particular of mind that I'd put at a higher priority, so I'm willing to consider all when we hear back from the Board of Ed.
Fair enough.
I don't have a final call on this yet.
Mike, additional thoughts?
Well, I think doing the zoning is really important. Having sat through the planning commission, going through our regs, it is way tougher than I thought it would be. And it's a lot more, it takes a lot of thought to do that right. So how we get there, whether it's a one-time transfer or something, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think adding in Main Street is something we should do. I think adding in the part-time clerk for the police department is something, and I'm not sure, till I know what happens with the zoning, what I got to work with, or what we have to work with.
I agree with Mike in terms of the zoning, and Mary, your request going to them for a one-time cash expenditure. I absolutely support that request.
All right. Option 3 will be a $40,000 return. Option 4 would be to add back items that increase the budget more than 2%. So those options are on the table. So when we present our budget for final, I think we can't. We have a budget workshop on Monday. So why don't we,
It's a short one.
it's an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we also have it on our agenda.
What are we going to do Monday? Just out of
So
curiosity.
Monday, I'll see if I can get more clarification on the Board of Eds.
Okay.
And I can't get a clarification on the zoning, but I can speak to the chair, maybe get consideration of whether they're
Good
inclined
idea.
to, get an idea whether they're inclined to bring it forward. So I think in order for Sean to prepare a budget, I think we do have to have that option nailed down on Monday.
Which option?
The option of how we're going to fund, I think we do have to vote, because we have to present the budget to the Board of Finance on the 25th. So we have budget workshops scheduled for Monday and Tuesday, but that still doesn't get us.
You're saying after the Board of Finance? There won't be a Board of
There won't be a
Finance
board,
meeting
that's what I'm
until-
saying. The only budget workshops we have scheduled for is Monday and Tuesday, and then the following Monday.
What about something an hour before the meeting on the 25th?
We do, but the only thing we'll be able to do, so here's my suggestion, because Sean we have to present our budget to the Board of Finance. If the board is comfortable with a 1.9% base, and we should vote on that on Monday, send that forward with our contingency options to add back.
If we get the Board of Ed.
If we get the Board of Ed.
So essentially, we'd be
Fine.
voting on some final version of this.
Yes, contingent upon the
0.98,
Board of
and
Ed.
then
Yeah.
contingent upon some clarification from
Yeah.
We're coming in at 1.98 no matter what.
Unless the
Unless somebody
board
votes to
decides
go
they
up.
want to add back more.
Right.
But I think.
We would vote on that
Yeah,
and then.
because then Sean could prepare the budget documents, and
makes
that
a
would be
lot
the
of
budget we
sense.
send forward with some contingencies. The Board of Finance consider ours, and they can make that adjustment.
Right, because 99% of this book is not going to change based on what we do.
Well, that's my
over the next-
concern. If we wait till the 24th, then Sean has to do all that,
That's,
and then resolutions, and we just won't have enough time. We can do the resolutions on Monday, the 24th,
Stuff to do with the other
Monday the 24th, yes.
correct?
yeah,
And that means that the budget book will be
you want that.
basically done. We'll be able to make some final adjustments on the add backs,
We do, I think so.
correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I think that's the process we should follow. We should start Monday night with the 1.98 and then have further discussions on our wish list.
Well, unless people want to vote tonight, I mean, if we're settled, if people need more time to think about it.
I think we ought to let it settle. I think we ought to let folks.
I don't think there's any gain to
reach
vote
out
tonight.
us.
There's no need.
There's no need
Sean's
to
not
act
going to
right now.
prepare anything before Monday. so.
Okay.
You're coming in tomorrow.
And Sarah, you mentioned that Board of Ed contingent, and to that, can we also, the 25,000 for the zoning, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
The
I'm going to get
request, yeah.
clarification on that.
Okay.
So for the public, the consensus of the board is that we've settled on a 1.98% budget. We have a good consensus of what we're including. We have consideration open on discussions with the zoning, with the Board of Ed and with the Board of Finance to offset the budget by additional $40,000, and that would keep us within the 1.98% budget. There's a possibility, option 4, that the budget would increase, but I'm not hearing tonight whether there's an appetite for that, but it's still up to the board to do. And then our next budget workshop will be Monday at 5:30. So we'll just have everything ready for recap, so everyone will understand what's in and what's out, and we'll be comfortable on what is before you.
Yeah.
That's fair.
To see the whole thing.
Yeah.
Any other information you need between now and Monday, or questions,
No, I
other
think-
than the additional information I'm going to get?
No, I think tonight cleared up a lot of stuff.
Mary, just to recap, in terms of the ones that I heard that this board is considering putting back, we've got Parks and Facilities Maintenance for 8,000, Main Street for 10, zoning regulations, cash expenditure by the Board of Finance request, 3,200 into EDC marketing with the 2,000 transfer from, it'd be 27, right? Because we're at 25 and we're going to put the 2,000 in?
Yeah, I don't know that we were doing anything that
It's just
indicated
a-
shifting.
it's a line.
It was
That's
more of
just a
an
shift,
add.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Then the next thing I have is part-time clerk for the police possibility. Did I miss anything that
How much
anyone's
was that?
put forward?
22.
I don't want to take off the custodian additional support, and
Okay, so we're going to keep
I
on.
do still want to look at the communication specialist, even if you
Yeah, I
a couple
agree.
more
I agree with
hours in
you.
there. I'm not willing to take it off
Okay.
yet.
I
So we
think that
got-
goes to number 4, where we're saying if we were to go above, all these things are still fair game.
Are still in play.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with those.
Well, and I think if the zoning regulations were not on the table, that my next option would have been communication. So that would be my.
Okay, so I think-
if I had to prioritize
So that, once we get
those.
some guidance from the
Yeah.
Board of Finance, we'll be able to do
move
these a
forward.
little. But everybody's comfortable with those for consideration right now, right?
Okay. All right, now I just made your job harder. Do we want to wait till Monday night to do the possible reductions? Again, I think that we've done a really good job being responsible, and I wouldn't recommend the reductions to 1 and 0.5, but
I agree.
if we need to show them, I think we need to put a number of items on that list.
I'm
Sean, to get us, let me ask just one question for information. To get us down to 1% from where we are, we have, what's the number?
Well, it's gonna be.
basically 2, so it's $185,000, $187,000.
And that's just to get us to 1.
It's just right.
So we have the one, but then a 90 on top of that, fair point.
Discussion. You want to discuss that one?
What happens to us if we don't do it?
I will
That's my question.
I will tell you, because I did go to the Board of Finance meeting, and the Board of Ed asked the same question, and the answer was,
Do it.
yeah, that's really it. So I personally don't think, I don't think it would be respectful.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm just wondering if it's, we're gonna end up sort of being disrespectful to these, at the things we're gonna end up slashing and burning, and I know the Board of Ed made the exact same argument, you really
They
want us
did.
to show that,
Right.
and apparently they do, but.
My opinion, Mary, I think that this is, we've done our job with this number, and I think we can make the case to them if they want to dig their heels in for the sake of digging their heels in.
Okay. Again, there's
I mean, we can come back and talk about it, but
Okay, so my suggestion would be that on the 24th, that we do show it, because I personally think we have to show it, but I will ask for clarification of that on the Tuesday.
Yeah,
So we
that's
do have time in between our next workshop. Or Wednesday. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
So we do have time, so I appreciate that. So I will report back that I'm asking for clarification, having presented the budget as the consensus is now.
Yeah.
With some recommendations. Mike.
And I would agree with that. I think we've got budget meetings Monday night, Tuesday night. We're going to the Board of Ed on Wednesday night. We have potentially a budget meeting next weekend.
Right.
So we could actually do some of those numbers there. It's going to get pretty ugly. But I think that's part of the exercise that I feel we need to do. Not going to enjoy it at all, but I do think it's a good thing. And there are a number of things that we've added in that we're going to have to look at cutting out. But, I think that's part of the process.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I think we've gone through everything on our agenda tonight. Possible action discussion, including action on previous budget workshop items. I think unless there's anything that the board needs or questions, you can certainly ask those on Monday or forward us any additional information you need.
Get a
I
copy
think-
of that last sheet, Mary?
Yeah, what I'll do is,
yeah,
we'll
that'd
ask
be great.
Sean to just send you before Monday,
The list he's
before
been-
Monday's meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Monday,
Then we'll
the
have that
list
from-
of where we are, in
Yeah.
terms of all of the 1.98.
Oh, no, don't do that.
Okay, so we'll get those, we'll have those available. Can we get those up at on the website too?
We're going to provide you with copies right now.
Wow.
perfect, thank you.
That's service.
Guys, if we adjourn really quick, we can be out of here.
And if we,
need a printer.
I'm sorry,
for
I'm just flipping through my,
or
what
not.
was the solar, the Simsbury
yeah.
Clean Energy Task Force request?
I think Tom addressed it earlier, but.
Oh,
I
I'm
need to
sorry.
just,
Sorry.
That was packaged up with other items to be part of
It was. Okay, I'm sorry, I was just organizing my papers, I
And
didn't realize we
so,
had done that.
so I think there's consensus for 1.98. We'll show you that. We'll revisit the items that are outstanding. One additional change on CNR, we'll make that change to the budget. The capital plan, the Board of Ed has requested that they present the capital plan to the Board of Selectmen on the 24th. So we'll have that discussion on the 24th. So we'll send out additional information. We did meet with staff on the capital plan, and Jeff's taken the lead on that and has done a great job. We did clarify some of the projects based on the last conversation that the board had. So we're going to send you amended sheets. We've taken some of the items out and reprioritized them. Minor. Most of the capital plan includes the same thing, but I did ask staff to go back and see if some of the trails requests, the EDC request for
Baker,
trail consulting funds for the Baker property, it seemed to us and staff that since we were recommending funding for the loop in the center of town, that while we had a consultant on board to do the loop, that maybe that would be the time to bring in the consultant on the Baker property. So we're going to add that to the capital plan. So you'll see that revision. So we've tried to find a natural fit where there were capital projects and some of the funding requests that we couldn't fund. So I did want to report on that. So you'll see the revised capital, you'll see the wish list, the 1.98 consensus budget, and then I'll report the budget discussions with the Board of Finance. Any other questions, Lisa?
Yeah. I just, to let the members of this board and the public know, you can also see the Board of Education's presentation on their capital budget, they did that to the Board of Ed, and I anticipate that it will be the same one, because that's what was approved, so if anyone wants to get a head start on that, you can look at that. Thanks. And then the second question I had, Mary, we've seen growth in the grand list, and I want to, people say we do all these studies, and now's the time to implement. Well, we've been implementing them, as Hiram's shown, 17 to 44 million coming in because of our implementation of all the planning we've done. But I guess my question is, given that we have growth in the grand list, given that the Board of Ed is coming in lower than they expected, and given that the Board of Finance is anticipating a smaller collection rate, does the 198 leave taxes have the potential to leave out? Some of these things are certainly out of our control, but does that now still leave taxes flat?
And I will also ask the Board of Finance that question as well.
That would be very
So that we'll have
helpful.
a sense
that would be good to know.
of what impact our budget will have on the overall tax rate.
Yeah,
I
'cause we
think
may
that
have
goes
to
back to
revisit some-
Sean's original point when we started. I mean, if they know we started at a place that,
Wasn't the right base.
yeah,
Right.
that,
Well, it's important to know what we ultimately decide, because people don't care what our budget number is.
What's the
They
last
want to
thing
know
you
what
read?
it
They wanna know
means
what
to
the
their
impact is.
taxes.
Exactly.
That's fair.
And so I
Exactly.
think it's
You need to
important
know
for
what
us to have an
impact.
understanding of what our budget
Absolutely.
decisions mean.
Yep.
I thought that was a great presentation we saw, where he showed the moving numbers. That was very
yeah.
helpful. That was really good.
A little scary, but it was good.
It was scary, but good.
Gets more fun than
I just
that.
want to say
Wait.
thank you to all the
Very
department
afraid.
people who
Yes.
talked to me this week and
and thank you for
Appreciate
coming
your
out on
work.
a Friday
walked
night.
me through and.
Misery
So,
loves
there
company.
being no further business before the Board of Selectmen, if I could have a motion to adjourn?
Move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.